Chapter 2240. King of the 10,000 Beasts, holy town perverted and insane. The celestial master of the 7 knights looked amused. He didn't recognize Lin Feng though. Lin Feng had just changed his face and chi again. He looked a bit different. Could it be that one though? The celestial master of the 7 knights didn't recognize Lin Feng. But when he guessed that it might be him, the one who had killed the cultivators from the sword sect, he looked amused. The guy was quite handsome, against all expectations. Impossible, said Qing Er behind him, shaking her head. She didn't believe that Lin Feng could have changed that much. The young man in front of them looked handsome. She could admit that Lin Feng had displayed an incredible strength during his previous battles. But she couldn't admit that he could be so young and handsome. The young man in front of them looked like her fellow disciple. How could Lin Feng be so strong at the same age? The members of the sword sect looked furious. Not only had he escaped, but he had also gone into Bai Yu's chamber. How audacious! According to legends, Great Emperor Bai was the only who had lived in that lake. Indeed, it's me, Lin Feng replied calmly to Bai Yu. He didn't know that Bai Yu's chamber was down there. He had thought it was an ordinary lake. Bai Yu looked at Lin Feng, and then turned around, no longer looking at him. She glanced at a few other young people. She looked extremely arrogant, as if she was the only important one in the world. Someone invaded Miss Bai's chamber, and she's not saying anything. She doesn't mind her reputation being tarnished? We've heard that apart from Great Emperor Bai, nobody has ever been in the lake. A young man said to Bai Yu mockingly, glancing at Lin Feng indifferently. That's my own problem. Now you people can leave, said Bai Yu calmly, controlling herself. We won't leave until you tell us what happened in King of the 10,000 Beasts town. Besides, we've heard that you were going there soon, is that true? If it is, I'll come with you, smiled a young man smiling. He also sounded quite calm. Those people weren't old, but they were all great imperial beasts. They were talented and strong, but they also had self-control. If they were furious though, they could slaughter uncounted numbers of beasts. They could dole out endless amounts of misery and suffering. Let's see if you're strong enough, said Miss Bai. She didn't even look at the young man talking to her. She looked at her hands, ignoring everyone else. The young man smiled and slowly walked towards her, saying, I've heard that you have inherited incredible things from Great Imperial City, such as the 13 destructive melodies. Teach me some things, since you have time. The young man released a sharp chi. A pair of golden wings appeared in his hands. The young man's hand streaked across the sky. The wings disappeared and reappeared in front of Bai Yu. The golden wings descended towards her, fissures appearing in the air, the wings shredding the air and shaking people's souls. Bai Yu released a barely discernible chi. A strange sound spread out as ice appeared around her. The space around her turned into an ice world. In front of Bai Yu, a snowy white zither appeared, and she started playing. Ice-cold thunder-like energies moved towards the wings in a flash, and destroyed the wings, which instantly vanished. How strong! Such a young great imperial beast. She must be only 100 years old. She's so strong. Lin Feng watched the battle. He looked quite composed. In the past, when he saw such terrifying cultivators, he used to be astonished. These days he was unmoved, because he was also that strong. However, what was the king of the 10,000 beasts territory? The young man slowly walked towards her. More and more golden wings appeared, cutting the space around them. He could easily crush emperors with such attacks. However, Bai Yu didn't even glance at him. Zither notes spread out. Icebergs appeared and flashed away. They shot towards the young man, but he didn't retreat. He raised his gigantic golden hands, and the ice energies crashed against them. Bai Yu didn't stop playing the zither. More and more ice appeared around her, and shot towards the young man. Gigantic waves appeared on the lake. Very quickly, the young man's hands felt numb, and was shivering. He withdrew to the top of a mountain. He put his hands behind his back, looking angry. He had not been able to get close to her. Miss Bai is extremely strong. Her attacks contain sound waves and invisible and intangible energies, which attack people's souls. The young man said icily. The crowd was shaken. They hadn't noticed that Bai Yu's attacks contained energies which attacked people's souls. They had underestimated her. People had to fight against her directly to understand how strong she was. I do want someone to come with me to the king of the 10,000 beasts territory, but you're way too weak, Baiyu said to the young man calmly. His face stiffened. Baiyu had humiliated him in front of everybody. So, who could come with you to the king of the 10,000 beasts territory? Asked another young man, standing at the top of another mountain. He must be able to defeat me at the same cultivation level at least, Baiyu said indifferently. Many people looked glum. At the same level defeating her? That was easier said than done. She had just displayed her strength. Not many people could compete with her. King of the 10,000 beasts territory? Lin Feng was curious and asked, "Where's the king of the 10,000 beasts territory?" Many people looked at him mockingly, including some great imperial beasts. This guy didn't know about the king of the 10,000 beasts territory. The king of the 10,000 beasts territory is the main territory of the 8 great imperial animal cities. However, nobody has ever seen him. According to legends, he's gone through hundreds of different bodies, and he's had hundreds of lives. His understanding of cultivation is astonishing, Baiyu said to Lin Feng indifferently. According to legends, if the king of the 10,000 beasts acknowledges you, you will be able to meet him there. I see. So none of you knows what the king of the 10,000 beasts territory actually is, smiled Lin Feng. Baiyu looked at him strangely and nodded. Kind of. She turned around and stopped looking at him. You want to go to the king of the 10,000 beasts territory? Someone asked icily. Jianchen rose up in the air and oppressed Lin Feng. Lin Feng had escaped once. He had already lost face. Now he was ignoring them again. What was Lin Feng thinking? Indeed, I'm thinking about it, said Lin Feng indifferently. You think you'll have an opportunity to escape? Snarled Jianchen, releasing a terrifying amount of sword intent towards Lin Feng. An explosive wind also started blowing and surrounded Lin Feng. The space around Lin Feng turned into a sword world. Jianchen didn't want to give Lin Feng any opportunity to escape. Why would I want to escape? Said Lin Feng calmly. Suddenly, a gigantic ancient cauldron appeared in front of Lin Feng. It contained incredible deployment lights. As he activated the ancient cauldron, Jianchen was startled and grunted icily. He stretched out his hand, and the sword whirlwind moved towards Lin Feng. The ancient cauldron started rotating. Lin Feng jumped into it and moved towards the sword strength. The sword strength bombarded the cauldron, but it wasn't effective at all. At the same time, a terrifying amount of strength filled the air. Dong! Death strength emerged from the ancient cauldron. Coupled with Lin Feng's death Dao, Jianchen's face suddenly turned gray. His face stiffened into a grimace. You're a celestial emperor, and you keep chasing me. Show me how you intend to kill me. Lin Feng understood the 10,000 evolutions cauldron really well. It was a powerful and priceless ancient treasure. Even the great deployment master had never forgotten about it, and had wanted to keep it. Lin Feng's eyes were cold as death. Many different types of soul strength started boiling in the cauldron. Lin Feng was burning them. Die! The cauldron shook violently. Death chi condensed all around. The celestial emperor's soul trembled. His soul had started being absorbed by the cauldron. A terrifying death chi surrounded him. Chapter 2241. Killing Jianchen's face stiffened in fury. He waved his hands and condensed an endless amount of sword lights, which promptly shot towards the ancient cauldron. Lin Feng was furious too. The souls in the deployment lights in the ancient cauldron were boiling angrily. The ancient cauldron was trembling and clanging wildly. The earth and sky were shaking all around him as well. Even the people around were terrified as they felt the death chi surround them. Jianchen had the impression something was beating on his chest. He could hear a melody of death in his head, and it made his thoughts tremble, while invisible and intangible death strength kept penetrating into his body. On top of that, Lin Feng also released millions of death stamps. And in the cauldron, a whirlwind filled with death energies appeared. Jianchen was a celestial emperor, a very strong cultivator. He felt pressured, but he didn't flinch. Sword intent started burning around him as he flashed forwards. Many gigantic swords shot towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng had the sensation his soul was being chopped. Jianchen wanted to attack his soul. We'll see how long you can survive, Lin Feng said coldly. His soul penetrated into the cauldron. He fused together with it. and then the 10,000 evolutions cauldron started rotating. A terrifying windstorm filled with death strength appeared, hurtling with the cauldron towards Jianchun. Jianchun heard 18 funeral bells clanging continuously. The sound waves corroded his life and made his thoughts tremble. How come Dao power can't attack his soul? Wondered Jianchun. He had the impression his soul was being drained out of his body. The death stamps were getting more and more dangerous. He had the feeling he could die anytime. Piss off! Shouted Jianchun furiously, releasing 3,000 gigantic swords which pierced through the atmosphere at the same time. Terrifying clanging sounds spread out. The ancient cauldron turned into a beam of light, redirecting itself towards the great emperors who had come with him. Dong! Another death peal rang out. A great emperor from the sword sect turned gray. Then his soul left his body. He lost control, and the ancient cauldron absorbed the soul. His body turned gray, now only a corpse. And then the cauldron also absorbed the corpse. Horrible shrieks started spreading out continuously. The cauldron was absorbing bodies and souls. Lin Feng's soul was in the 10,000 evolutions cauldron. The cauldron had become his body. He attacked another strong cultivator of the sword sect. That cultivator's face stiffened as he retreated, but Lin Feng didn't give him any chance to escape. The cauldron continued clanging. Death strength surrounded him. Lin Feng's death Dao was extremely effective in the cauldron. It was terrifying. He's reached the top of the last level in terms of Dao. He can kill people instantly with his Dao power, thought the celestial master of the 7 knights, watching all this. His heart was pounding. That young man's strength was terrifying. Usually, to understand Dao like Lin Feng did, a cultivator had to have reached the Shengdi layer. On top of that, Lin Feng understood Dao power, and so even great emperors couldn't do anything against him. Even if they used great imperial weapons, they couldn't do much against him. Lin Feng could crush their souls instantly. Jianchun looked at Lin Feng, his face frozen. It wasn't about feeling humiliated anymore. The problem was that Lin Feng was slaughtering the great emperors of the sword sect. Even worse, Lin Feng was just an emperor. And he was a celestial emperor, but Lin Feng's Dao power was better than his. Each time the ancient cauldron clanged, it corroded his life a little bit. Ah! Horrible screams rose continuously. Souls kept being absorbed by Lin Feng's 10,000 evolutions cauldron and turned into the cauldron's strength. When Lin Feng activated the soul deployment marks, the 10,000 evolutions cauldron's power was multiplied. Jianchun condensed sword strength, but didn't manage to break the cauldron. It was like a very high-level great imperial weapon. When the cauldron finished killing all the strong cultivators of sword sect, it zoomed towards Jianchun. He couldn't break the cauldron, he couldn't do anything against it. He condensed more sword strength in the form of a whirlwind. His figure disappeared into all the energies. The death whirlwind also surrounded him. Dazzling sword lights filled the air. Jianchun had turned into a sword. He stabbed into the cauldron. Lin Feng promptly started crushing his physical body. Lin Feng laughed on the inside. Jianchun was courting death. A mysterious qi filled the air and surrounded Lin Feng's physical body, which disappeared. The cauldron trembled as a massive amount of explosive energy filled the air again. The strength smashed into the cauldron, which crashed down onto the waters of the lake. At the same time, the 10,000 evolutions cauldron shone brightly. Millions of death stamps emerged and attacked the terrifying sword, which turned black. Many people were looking at the cauldron in the water, trying to see what was going on precisely. Miss Bai's eyes were twinkling, and she jumped into the water. Beneath the water, the ice palaces were getting crushed. The gigantic cauldron was rotating and crushing everything in its way. Within the cauldron, the gigantic sword turned into millions of swords and struck at the deployment marks inside. It wanted to break the cauldron. However, nobody knew who had made the cauldron, not even Lin Feng. But the deployment marks inside were terrifying. It was almost impossible to destroy them. No matter how many sword attacks Jianchun used, he couldn't break them. And on top of that, the death stamps kept attacking him. He started to despair. Jianchun in sword form finally realized there was something wrong. He had thought he would be able to destroy Lin Feng's soul inside here. But Lin Feng's soul and the cauldron were one already. He couldn't destroy the cauldron, so he couldn't destroy Lin Feng's soul, either. Jianshan couldn't escape anymore. He had the impression he was in a deadly star-studded sky, a world made of death. The sword moved in all directions, but all Jianshan could see was darkness and deployment marks. In other words, he couldn't see any exit. He couldn't even see Lin Feng's physical body. "Break!" shouted Jianshan furiously, but it was useless. Death stamps continued attacking his body. The soul strength contained in the cauldron was shining darkly and surrounded his soul, corroding it. Lin Feng was annoyed because even with such attacks, it was extremely difficult to kill a celestial emperor. They belonged to different worlds in terms of strength. However, since he had come into the cauldron, Lin Feng couldn't let him out. He had to take this chance to kill him. Lin Feng hoped he'd be able to fuse Jianshan's soul together with the cauldron. That way, he'd be able to use it as cauldron strength. The cauldron would be much more terrifying with the celestial emperor's soul. Millions of death stamps continued attacking the sword, whose chi became weaker and weaker. Gradually, Jianshan's body slowly replaced the sword, but his body was growing transparent and distorted. Jianshan, a celestial emperor and sword cultivator, was terrified. Was he going to be killed by a trivial and useless emperor? No matter what, Lin Feng wanted to crush him, kill him, and use his soul to make the cauldron more powerful. He was a celestial emperor, so what? Time passed slowly. Jianshan was becoming weaker and weaker. When he saw the death stamps kept attacking him over and over again, he suddenly felt desperate, hopeless, and miserable. He sighed and said, "I never thought I'd get killed by a trivial emperor today. If your soul stays in the cauldron, if you help me become strong in the future, maybe then, you won't feel sad anymore," said Lin Feng coldly, yet aggressively. Jianshan twitched but actually nodded. He stopped resisting. The cauldron gradually modified his soul and assimilated it. Chapter 2242. By Yu's thoughts, many buildings in the water had been wrecked by the cauldron. When the cauldron finished modifying and assimilating Jianshan's soul, Lin Feng's soul moved back into his own body, and he came out of the cauldron. His soul was shaking. He looked weak, but his eyes were twinkling. He examined at the 10,000 evolutions cauldron strength again. Since Lin Feng had obtained the 10,000 evolutions cauldron, he hadn't used it a lot. He had experimented now and then, but the 10,000 evolutions cauldron was a mysterious and priceless treasure. The cauldron's soul was becoming more and more real each time it absorbed a soul, even if it wasn't a very powerful one. Lin Feng hoped someday he'd be able to use the cauldron to fight against terrifying cultivators, so he wouldn't need to bother Qin Shan each time he faced someone dangerous. The godly medicine had helped Qin Shan a lot. He would be able to reclaim his power someday. Lin Feng also needed to find the rebirth scriptures for Qin Shan. That way, he might recover completely. Lin Feng recalled the 10,000 evolutions cauldron, his eyes twinkling. He looked at the cauldron and thought, now, you have a celestial emperor's soul. When it's completely refined and modified, you will become extremely strong. If a celestial emperor attacks me again, it won't be easy for him to defeat me. At that moment, some figures in white clothes landed in front of Lin Feng. The leader of the group was an incredibly beautiful woman in a white short dress. "Baiyu, Miss Bai, I'm sorry for having destroyed some of your buildings. That wasn't my purpose at all, as you can imagine." Lin Feng apologized to Baiyu. After all, the lake was her residence. He really felt sorry. Surprisingly, with the strength of the Huangqi layer, you killed a celestial emperor of the sword sect from Long Night City. You're extremely strong. Baiyu replied calmly. "I used a treasure, I'm not that strong. I feel ashamed," replied Lin Feng briefly. However, Baiyu shook her head and said, "A celestial emperor could crush an ordinary emperor in the twinkling of an eye. They would just have to think about it. That strong cultivator from the sword sect chased you up to here, which means that you fought before, and you didn't use your cauldron during that previous battle. Even without using your cauldron, you can also kill great emperors from the sword sect, and those people are also strong." "Well, yes, maybe," Lin Feng agreed. He didn't have much to say. "Miss Bai, you said you wanted someone to come with you to the king of the 10,000 beasts territory. May I come with you even though I am a human?" asked Lin Feng. The king of the 10,000 beasts territory seemed to be a legendary and mysterious place. Lin Feng wanted to see what kind of animal world it was. I did say I wanted someone to come with me. But I also said that I would let someone come with me if they could defeat me, at the same cultivation level. Even though I'm sure you would be able to defeat me if you were a great emperor, now, you're just an emperor. I won't fight against you with the strength of the Huangqi layer. Maybe I can defeat you with the strength of the Huangqi layer. Lin Feng smiled. Baiyu smiled and said, you can try. That's exactly what I want to do. Lin Feng nodded. He released millions of death stamps which floated around him. Death qi invaded the lake in the air, turning the waters black. Everything rotted away within the death strength. A pair of dazzling deployment wings appeared on Lin Feng's back, and deployment lights intertwined. Lin Feng turned into a beam of light and shot towards Baiyu. Lin Feng landed in front of Baiyu, raising his fist and punching out. Death stamps moved towards her. However, Baiyu turned into shadows and evaded lightning fast. She was quick too. She reacts so fast. Thought Lin Feng impressed. He didn't stop moving, releasing overpowering death strength, which formed into a monster. Each time he attacked, it was like a death beast was attacking. Suddenly, the water began to churn. A loud music spread in the air. Sound waves moved towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng raised his fist and punched them, crushing everything in his way. His physical strength was incredible, but even so some sound waves flowed around and towards him. His soul was trembling. He had the impression it was going to explode. That kind of attack was extremely dangerous. Soul attacks always were. Against a soul attack, physical strength was useless. And Baiyu's music attack was aimed at his soul. If Lin Feng had been an ordinary emperor, he wouldn't withstood a single attack. His soul would have been destroyed instantly. At that moment, Lin Feng had already used lots of soul strength, and it wasn't pleasant. Lin Feng punched out again. 9 words appeared around him and fused together with the water. He roared furiously, his voice carrying cursing strength. Baiyu's skull started trembling. She used soundwave attacks, so Lin Feng did the same. The water around them was boiling. Lin Feng jumped forwards and teleported himself using empty space strength. Baiyu continued playing the zither, the sound waves shooting towards him. Lin Feng opened his mouth and released soundwave strength too. Their sound waves collided. The water around them started bursting. Lacerate. Lin Feng released sword intent, and more death strength through his eyes. It penetrated into Baiyu's eyes. Millions of threads of death stamps besieged her. Her life was slowly being corroded away by Lin Feng's Dao strength. Baiyu's eyes turned black with astonishment. How could a cultivator of the Huangqi layer resist her? She was a great emperor. In terms of speed, soul strength, physical strength, cosmic energies, and Dao power, Lin Feng was as strong as her if not stronger. His Dao strength was incredible. That's enough, shouted Baiyu. Just as Lin Feng was about to carry out another attack, Lin Feng's figure stopped. Baiyu wasn't far away from him. He said politely, Miss Bai? That's enough. I'll take you to the king of the 10,000 beasts territory, she told him. His eyes twinkled, he smiled and said, All right, thank you for your kindness. Don't thank me. I can't go to the king of the 10,000 beasts territory alone. I'm not strong enough. I just hope I can use you and your strength. Besides, we're only 2 people, that's not enough. We need more people, Baiyu told him. Lin Feng said, The young men outside don't seem to be weak. Baiyu shook her head. Still not enough. Among them, only one is fairly strong. You could easily kill the others. They just have a good reputation because they were born in powerful families. Actually, in the 8 great imperial animal cities, some people can easily kill them. Lin Feng was surprised, as those great emperors were not weak. I see. So why don't you invite those strong people, suggested Lin Feng. However, Baiyu looked at him strangely. Lin Feng was surprised and understood something. He smiled and conjectured. You're worried that you wouldn't be able to control them because they could be stronger than you? Lin Feng had just fought against Baiyu, but he guessed that she hadn't used her full strength. She wanted to find someone who was strong, but she was also worried that the person would be too strong. She wanted to keep the situation under control. Lin Feng was strong, but Baiyu thought that she could control him. She didn't want to fight against people who were truly stronger than her. She wanted to fight people who were slightly weaker than her at most. Let's go, said Baiyu, without replying to Lin Feng's question. Lin Feng nodded. When they came out of the water, the crowd noticed that the Celestial Emperor had disappeared. They frowned, especially the Celestial Master of the Seven Knights and the others. Where was Jianchen? Had Lin Feng killed him? Miss Bai came out with him. Does it mean she's not mad that he destroyed some of her buildings? Wondered many people outside. Nobody had dared go into the lake. Those who had dared go inside in the past had been killed by Baiyu. Chapter 2243. Devouring the Saint Luck. Everybody was convinced that the Saint Luck of those 3 birds was incredible. With it, the chances of becoming saints was really high. Father, which bird should we chase? Alma asked Lin Feng. The one with the fishers, said Lin Feng. Of the 2 other birds, one had teleportation abilities, and the other one controlled void strength. Chasing them was too difficult. Even the other strong cultivators knew it'd be difficult to catch them. All the birds were being chased by strong cultivators all around Lin Feng. Their chi was fierce, especially those who were from shrines. They joined hands to chase the birds, so they posed a threat to everyone else. Stop, said someone coldly. Lights flickered and encircled that gigantic bird. However, the gigantic bird whistled and continued moving forwards, releasing a terrifying explosive empty space strength. The strong cultivators who were chasing didn't give up. They even put more pressure on it in a frenzy. Its speed is incredible, said Almo. He was already using his maximum speed, moving as fast as lightning, but the bird was so fast, they were only drawing closer slowly. The members of the fire shrine want to chase this bird, too, thought Lin Feng, glancing around. Cheongjiu Tian looked cold and detached. Everybody wanted Saint Luck. They all had to use their full strength to chase the bird. He's not so strong, said a strong cultivator in the group of people from the fire shrine. Yes, we didn't try to get the Saint Luck from the 9 dragons. Since we decided to chase this one, we have to do all we can to get it. And the most difficult is yet to come, said Cheongjiu Tian. The fire shrine had to get this one. The gigantic bird controls atmosphere-destroying strength too. It's probably related to the Saint Luck he has. If we capture him, we'll also gain an incredible spell, said Cheong Haiya. The group of people of the fire were on a gigantic fire sword which streaked across the sky at high speed, trailing fire. Daimon, said the fat guy to Lin Feng at that moment. Lin Feng smiled and said, Fatty, people from the Soul Shrine want to get that bird too? I'm not that interested. If you want him, I can help you, said the fat guy. He felt like he owed Lin Feng, as without Lin Feng, he wouldn't have left the supreme ancient pit of hell alive. All right, help me block the others then, said Lin Feng smiling. No problem. I'm quite strong, laughed the fat guy. His flesh covered his eyes each time he smiled or laughed. Mine, said a strong cultivator, stretching out his hands towards the bird. However, when he grabbed the bird, the latter became illusionary and gained altitude. The strong cultivator's face stiffened in surprise. Boom! A strong wind swept away a number of cultivators. How is that possible? The one who had just tried to grab the bird looked at his hands, stunned. Those who were chasing the birds were also shocked. Could that bird really break the atmosphere and disappear inside to teleport himself? How to catch him then? Wondered Lin Feng. He was annoyed. Had he chosen the wrong bird? The gigantic bird landed on the peak of a mountain and stopped. It glanced over at the crowd in a sharp way. It looked almost amused and taunting. The strong cultivators who were chasing it also stopped and watched it. Their eyes were glittering. I'll try, said a strong cultivator moving forwards. Nobody prevented him from trying. His empty space strength was very strong. He stretched out his hands to catch the bird, but just like a moment before, he caught nothing but air. The strong cultivator was astonished. His face froze. Crush him, said Cheong Haiya coldly. Fire appeared all around him, and he threw himself at the bird. Chains made of fire appeared all around the bird. The bird looked at him disdainfully, as if the fire was too weak for him. Getting Saint Luck and becoming a saint is not easy at all, mused Lin Feng. Alma said, Father, that bird controls atmosphere-breaking strength. To it, everything is emptiness. Attacking him is useless. Only saints could attack it. But you have a mysterious strength, so you can try and see if your attacks work on him. Indeed, only a terrifying empty space attack could work on the bird. But Lin Feng's strength was different from other people. He controlled God's strength, God Dao. If Alma hadn't reminded Lin Feng about it, he wouldn't have thought about it. After the first man, other people tried, but it was useless. Lin Feng released and condensed God's strength, and flashed forwards. When Qiong Haiya saw that, he grunted coldly. But the bird suddenly couldn't get free from Lin Feng's attack, and started struggling. Alma! Shouted Lin Feng. Father! Shouted Alma. Open your mouth, said Lin Feng. Alma roared. Lin Feng's God strength pushed the bird into Alma's mouth. A terrifying Saint Luck strength started flowing through Alma's body. His dark scales became dazzling. The others were astonished. Alma had absorbed the Saint Luck. Go, whispered Lin Feng. He hadn't thought it would work. Alma roared and spiraled up into the air. A fireball shot at Lin Feng. Alma rose higher, as some fire chains appeared around him and Lin Feng. Become small, I'll take care of it, shouted Lin Feng. Alma became tiny, and went into Lin Feng's arms. He had to protect the Saint Luck. Be careful, father, said Alma. Lin Feng dodged the attack and released empty space, then moved as fast as lightning. Daimon, stop, shouted Qiong Haiya coldly. The strong cultivators of the fire shrine surrounded him. Fatty, shouted Lin Feng. The fat guy nodded and shouted furiously. The crowd shook because his voice was too loud. They had the impression their souls were going to explode, and the world collapse around them. Even though Lin Feng was prepared, his soul shook too. That fat guy's attacks were powerful and affected him, too. Enough, said Lin Feng. He still wanted to attack Qiong Haiya, but the fat guy's attack had hit everyone. So he had missed the opportunity to attack. But as the crowd was trembling, Lin Feng struggled, and started leaving at his top speed. Bastard! That black dragon's cultivation level is not strong enough. You made him absorb Saint Luck. It's a waste, shouted some people furiously. But it was useless. Lin Feng had already had Alma absorb the Saint Luck. Many people stopped and looked at the two other birds. Maybe they would have an opportunity there. But the members of the fire shrine didn't want to give up and continued chasing Lin Feng, infuriating him. Daimon, shouted Qi Lianshan. He looked at the fat guy and asked, What's going on? Help me, shouted Lin Feng. Qi Lianshan nodded and flashed forwards, releasing a terrifying strength. The others all had the impression they were stuck in moving sands. Good, said Qi Lianshan happily. Lin Feng was happy some people were helping him. Qi Lianshan, fatty, don't cause trouble, said Qiong Jiotian to those two people coldly. We definitely will cause trouble, said Qi Lianshan. The fat guy shrugged and said, I feel like causing trouble too. Qi Lianshan, fight against Qiong Jiotian. Fatty, block the two others, I'll take care of Qiong Haiya, said Lin Feng. The two people nodded. Qiong Haiya smiled coldly. Daimon was too insolent. Father, should I help? Asked Alma. He wanted to fight too. No need. How are you feeling? Asked Lin Feng. I want to get the Saint Luck of the two other birds. This Saint Luck contains incredible empty space strength. It looks like celestial Tao. It's extremely powerful. You shouldn't have given it to me, said Alma. No problem. Even if you can't become a saint now, you'll have the opportunity in the future. I'm not like you, I don't need Saint Luck, replied Lin Feng. Alma hissed, and continued assimilating the Saint Luck. Chapter 2243-2. Nameless Baiyu slowly rose up into the air, and landed on the top of a mountain. She glanced around and said slowly, I have made a decision. Apart from me, I will choose 6 other people to bring to the king of the 10,000 beasts territory. When Baiyu said that, the young people frowned. One of them smiled and said, So you mean you will let us come with you? Baiyu slowly turned around and looked at Lin Feng, saying, He is one of them. Regarding the 5 others, I have already made up my mind. If you think you can defeat them, then you can come with me. The crowd all looked at Lin Feng coldly. An emperor had been chosen by Baiyu? Baiyu was famous in the great imperial city. She couldn't do things carelessly, and surprisingly, she had chosen Lin Feng. It meant that she acknowledged his strength, that she had fought against him. But those young people were famous in the 8 great imperial cities. They couldn't accept the fact that Lin Feng might be stronger than them, even if he had killed a celestial emperor and so many great emperors, especially since he had used a great imperial weapon. "Who are the 5 others?" asked someone, without attacking Lin Feng immediately. "Qinghai's rock," Baiyu answered indifferently. The crowd was astonished, their faces stiffened. Qinghai's rock? Baiyu had chosen him. They couldn't compete with him, mainly because of his speed. He just had to flap his wings twice or thrice, and he could outdistance them extremely quickly without them having the chance to catch up ever. "Who else?" "Easy's Maharaga," continued Baiyu. The young men's faces stiffened even more. One of them said, "Miss Bai, you can't choose such monstrous people, or it won't be beneficial for you." The others just took a deep breath when they heard Baiyu. Easy's Maharaga was a terrifying cultivator, a monster. His poison could kill celestial emperors, and he was at the very top of the Diqi layer. Easy's Maharaga was also very old, according to legends at least. Nobody dared get close to him, because of his poison. They hadn't though Miss Bai would choose such people. 3 more people," said another young man to Baiyu. He was going crazy with thwarted ambition. Dark golden-pupiled king, Zishu's flood dragon Dinua's sword. Baiyu finished calmly. Everybody around her, humans and beasts alike, was astonished. The people Baiyu had chosen despised the young people who had come here. Those who had come were already considered geniuses in the 8 great imperial animal cities. However, facing the people Baiyu had mentioned, they felt tiny and weak. Qinghai's rock, Heezy's Maharaga, the dark golden-pupiled king, Zishu's flood dragon Dinua's sword. Those 5 people were very strong. People didn't even dare mention their names. Qinghai's rock was the descendant of a terrifying blue-green bird and a great emperor. His speed and attacks were terrifying. Heezy's Maharaga had killed a terrifying celestial emperor in the past with his poison. People were really scared of him. Few people dared offend either of them. Thankfully, they rarely showed up those days because they were trying to break through. The dark golden-pupiled king was a descendant of a rock and a dark-pupiled king. He was extremely talented, with the qualities of both beasts. He was sly, brutal, and terrifying. Zishu's flood dragon was a terrifying flood dragon. According to legends, when he was young, he had stolen the blood of the purple emptiness dragon king, which had granted him a terrifying strength. He had real dragon blood. Nobody dared fight against using purely physical attacks. In terms of defense, nobody could compete with him at the same cultivation level. Dinua's sword was the most ordinary of all those people. But he wasn't ordinary. Nobody knew what he was. He was a beast, but he studied the sword with humans. He had studied swords for 1,000 years. People said that his swordsmanship had reached the peak of perfection. He had killed a flood dragon of the same cultivation level. After that, he had become famous in the animal world. Miss Bai was Great Emperor Bai's descendant, and even though she was famous, she couldn't compete with those people. She had invited those 5 people, and it was dangerous for her. Any one of those 5 people could crush her if they wanted to. Because of those 5 names, the young people who had come felt powerless. When Lin Feng saw those people's reactions, he understood how terrifying those named were. The 5 people Baiyu had invited could easily kill these young people. They were all at the top of the Diqi layer, and could easily kill ordinary great emperors. It was thus obvious that Miss Bai wasn't a simple cultivator. Otherwise, she wouldn't have dared invite them. "Miss Bai, I would feel ashamed of being inferior in front of such people. It's just that this guy is a human, and he only has the strength of the Huangqi layer. Why would he go with you?" asked someone at that moment. It was a young man in cyan clothes named Qing Yi. As Baiyu had said, if one of those young people was stronger than the others, it was him. He had the body of a blue-green bird, and was from the same sect as Qinghai's rock. However, he was much weaker, and would never be able to catch up with him. Despite that, he actually was really strong. If you don't agree, you can fight against him. If you defeat him, you can replace him, said Baiyu carelessly. Qing Yi was surprised. From the tone of her voice, Qing Yi had the impression she didn't believe he could defeat Lin Feng. He was a genius, and he was a great imperial beast, while Lin Feng was merely an emperor. Qingyi couldn't imagine that. With only the strength of the Huangqi layer, Lin Feng could defeat him. Of course, I don't think you need to fight, because apart from me and the 6 other people, I also need 2 substitutes, because anything could happen in the King of the 10,000 Beasts territory. Therefore, I hope we can be 9 people. Qingyi, you're also on my name list, Baiyu continued calmly. However, Qingyi didn't feel happy at all, as being a substitute was nothing glorious. Besides, how could he accept having a lower position than a cultivator of the Huangqi layer? However, Qingyi accepted coldly. I see then. I feel honored. Baiyu knew he wasn't happy, considering his tone of speech. But she didn't care and said, since you agree, let's get ready to go. Go where? Asked Qingyi. Go and see those 5 people, replied Baiyu. Miss Bai, do you know where they are? Asked Qingyi. He was surprised. Even if Qinghai's rock and Qingyi were from the same sect, he didn't know where Qinghai's rock was. The other 4 were also enigmatic. How could they find those people easily? Naturally, replied Baiyu. She sounded convinced. Miss Bai, isn't there one last spot? Asked the other young people. They didn't feel happy. They had come to Baiyu, and they wanted to give her some presents. Now they had arrived, and she didn't care about them. Those people were all geniuses, but Baiyu kind of despised them. Yes, my maid, said Baiyu indifferently. Those people were dumbfounded. No spot for them. We'll see if relying on your sense of judgment was a good idea, Miss Bai, said one of them, staring at Lin Feng coldly. He was furious. He released explosive bestial qi, which surrounded Lin Feng. His hands turned pitch black and shot towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng ignored the strength which was coming towards him, flashing forward as death stamps attacked the young man. Piss off, shouted the young man angrily. His oppressive strength surrounded Lin Feng. However, Lin Feng resisted using his physical strength. He moved lightning fast and raised his fist. Death Dao and death stamps pounded at him. You really want to die? Shouted that young man furiously. He punched out, and his energies turned into a cage. He wanted to prevent Lin Feng from moving away. The atmosphere around them turned into a dark world. Sword energies appeared. Mighty punches collided loudly. The pitch-black hand exploded. Lin Feng shouted, and lightning swords appeared. Holes appeared in the sky around them. A terrifying death holy spirit smashed into his opponent and corroded his life, turning his face gray. He shouted furiously as his body turned into a black ox king. The atmosphere became oppressive around him, but Lin Feng landed in front of him. He raised his fist and punched the ox violently. Blood splashed everywhere, astonishing everyone. How brutal and explosive. He's scary, whispered the crowd. That human strength was more explosive than a beast's. Chapter 2244. Invitation. After Lin Feng punched his opponent, the latter fell from the sky reeling. Everybody was surprised because the ox had a terrifying physical strength. He was an ox after all. The crowd thought that Miss Bai had a good sense of judgment after all. Lin Feng was really impressive. He didn't need to use his cauldron to be extremely strong physically, and could easily defeat a great imperial beast, who was considered as a genius. The crowd was astonished. Do you have anything to say? Baiyu asked the ox indifferently. She had anticipated the result of the battle earlier. The gigantic ox frowned and said hoarsely, since Miss Bai can go to the King of the 10,000 Beasts territory, I can go too. I don't need to go with you, Miss Bai. I'm sure we'll meet again. After that, he turned into a human again and left, feeling ashamed and humiliated. The other young people left too. Only Baiyu and Qingyi were left behind. Qingyi asked Baiyu, Miss Bai, are we getting ready to go now? Yes, Baiyu nodded. Who are we going to look for first? Qinghai's rock. Even though you don't know where he is, I do. In your nest with Princess Qinghai, replied Baiyu evenly. Qingyi was surprised and pulled a long face. Qinghai's rock was with Princess Qinghai. Qingyi liked Princess Qinghai. It wasn't a secret. Many people knew that. But Princess Qinghai wasn't interested in him. And now Qinghai's rock was with her. How could he be happy about that? You others, stay here and protect the lake, said Baiyu to the other people left behind. Her figure flickered as she left. Only one girl whom Baiyu had invited came with them. the maid she had talked about. She was a substitute like Qing Yi. Of course, in case Bai Yu needed her, she would also be able to help. Lin Feng and Qing Yi followed along. However, Qing Yi unconsciously glanced at Lin Feng. He was a substitute, and if he had the chance, he would be able to replace the human. He had seen how strong Lin Feng was a moment before. He wouldn't be able to compete with the 5 others, but if he seized an opportunity, he might be able to replace Lin Feng. Qinghai was a vast sea, and there were many palaces under the water. In one of the palaces, 2 people were snuggling. The young man was seated on a throne. He looked sharp and was wearing a cyan robe. Each time he moved, a mysterious qi appeared around him. He looked like a great scholar respected for learning and integrity. He resembled nature itself. On his laps was a woman. Even though she looked extremely strong, she also looked like a docile and gentle little girl. "When will you propose a marriage alliance to my father?" asked the beautiful woman at that moment. The young man gazed into the distance. He looked extraordinary. He said, "Wait until I break through to the Tiandi layer. Then, I'll propose a marriage alliance immediately. That way, nobody will be able to refuse." "All right," agreed the woman. "It's just that Qing Yi is pestering me. He keeps courting me. I'm not interested in him at all." "Ignore him," said the young man indifferently. At that moment, he suddenly raised his head and noticed something in the sea. "Who's there?" The water opened itself. He turned into a beam of light and rose up into the water at speed, carrying the woman with him. He crossed a distance of several thousands of meters in the blink of an eye and saw some people. "Bai Yu Qing Yi," the young man frowned and asked coldly, "What do you want?" As expected, when Qing Yi saw the woman with the young man, his face turned deathly pale. He clenched his fists. He wanted to be with that woman. Many people in Qinghai agreed with him. But now it was impossible. He would never have a chance again, because she was with that guy now. When the woman saw Qing Yi, she pressed her body against her boyfriend and smiled widely. "Qinghai's rock. I want to invite some people to come to the King of the 10,000 Beasts territory. Do you want to come with me?" asked Bai Yu. She wasn't the kind of person who spoke around a point. King of the 10,000 Beasts territory. Qinghai's rock's eyes twinkled and he asked, "Who else is going?" "A few people. Heezy's Maharaga, dark golden-pupiled king, Zishu's flood dragon, Dinua's sword," answered Bai Yu. Qinghai's rock remained silent for a few seconds and said, "When?" "We're gathering now and then we're leaving," said Bai Yu. Qinghai's rock took out a jade talisman. Bai Yu understood. She took out a jade talisman as well. They exchanged a thread of godly awareness. "When you're ready, call me and I'll come," said Qinghai's rock calmly. Neither of them talked for nothing. "All right, goodbye," replied Bai Yu. They left as quickly as they had arrived. Qing Yi's muscles were still twitching. He clenched his fists powerlessly. In Heezy, Bai Yu and the others arrived above a black hut. Lin Feng looked at that black hut and sensed a strong wind. It was sharp and stinky. His blood started boiling, and his hair bristled at the stench. "That's a powerful poison," thought Lin Feng. Some people came outside, and energies emerged from the black hut. Lin Feng released sharp sword lights. At the same time, Bai Yu took out her zither and started playing, her melodies transcendental. The energies continued emerging from the black hut, still smelling badly. "Buddy, are you coming to the King of the 10,000 Beasts territory or not?" asked Bai Yu. The black fog stopped and dispersed at that moment, and a Maharaga slowly appeared in the doorway. He slithered over to them. His eyes were filled with poisonous energies, and he kept hissing. "Explain," said Heezy's Maharaga indifferently. "I've invited Qinghai's rock. I'm about to invite the dark golden-pupiled king, Zishu's flood dragon, and Dinua's sword. Are you coming?" asked Bai Yu straightforwardly. Heezy's Maharaga hissed, his eyes twinkled, and he said, "When you're sure, send someone to inform me." Then, he disappeared in black fog, like he had never appeared. "He's so rude, arrogant, and overbearing," swore Qing Yi. Then he realized he better shut up. "Next one," said Bai Yu indifferently. She already had 2 people, 3 more to go. They went into another sea. Bai Yu quickly found Zishu's flood dragon. He was a flood dragon with purple antennae, looking sly and dangerous. He immediately accepted. The dark golden-pupiled king was practicing cultivation in a volcano. Bai Yu found him anyway. She had prepared everything and could easily find everyone. The dark golden-pupiled king accepted too. The last one was Dinua's sword. Lin Feng gazed into the distance and saw a mountain. At first glance he saw nobody. After a few hours, still nothing or nobody. Finally Bai Yu lost patience. Why was he wasting time? Are you coming to the king of the 10,000 beasts territory or not? Asked Bai Yu straightforwardly. However, this time, nobody paid attention to her. Dinua's sword was there, gazing into the distance. Is he practicing cultivation? Wondered Lin Feng. Dinua's sword looked ordinary, but he was bathing in a special qi. At first glance he looked ordinary, but each time Lin Feng blinked and looked at him again, he had the impression he was looking at someone or something different. How extraordinary! Bai Yu didn't say anything else useless. Dinua's sword was gazing into the distance. However, at that moment, Dinua's sword turned to Bai Yu and said, "I'm coming." When? "We're all ready," said Bai Yu. The 5 people had agreed. Nobody had refused. Nobody had talked nonsense. Chapter 2245. King of the 10,000 Beasts territory. Since everybody was ready, Bai Yu informed everyone else, and on the day after, they gathered together outside of the king of the 10,000 Beasts territory. "Old poisonous monster," said Qinghai's rock to Heezy's Maharaga coldly. "Little birdie, you're here too," said Heezy's Maharaga smiled. They knew each other. Heezy's Maharaga had been famous for a while, and when Qinghai's rock was young, people were already terror-stricken when they saw the former. Back then, he had almost killed Qinghai's rock. Then the latter had grown up, and they had stopped fighting. They were both dangerous, one was fast. "Dark golden-pupiled king," said Qinghai's rock, glancing at the dark golden-pupiled king. His eyes were dark and golden. He looked sly and strange. They had a similar bloodline. They both had rock blood, and thus both were fast. However, apart from rock blood, the dark golden-pupiled king also had blue-green bird's blood, so he was even faster. "How exciting. You're all here," said Zishu's flood dragon. All those beasts were terrifying people. If people from the 8 great imperial animal cities saw this, they would be amazed. Dinua's sword looked calm and serene, completely ordinary. However, the others kept some distance. Those 5 people were all terrifyingly strong, and they were all vigilant. Even though they were self-confident, they didn't dare underestimate people who were as famous as themselves, including Bai Yu. However, they ignored Lin Feng, Qingyi, and Bai Yu's maid. They didn't even look at them. They only paid attention to the few great emperors who were already there, and people who were stronger. "Alright, get ready. We're going to enter king of the 10,000 beasts territory. The people there are crazy," said Bai Yu calmly at that moment. "Hee, let's go and have some fun. I've heard that the king of the 10,000 beasts territory is divided into several small powerful groups. Weak beasts keep fighting chaotically. Bai Yu, your father came here a short time. How was it?" asked Qinghai's rock. Not just anyone dared go to the king of the 10,000 beasts territory. Inside, there were many terrifying, cunning, and cruel beasts. Bai Yu had decided to ignore all those young people who had potential to go to the king of the 10,000 beasts territory, opting for Qinghai's rock and the others instead. "We'll know how it is once we're inside. You won't be disappointed," said Bai Yu calmly. Heezy's Maharaga hissed and said, "Since it's that way, let's go. I can't wait to see what it's like inside, and finally, I found some people to go there with me." "Perfect. It won't be easy inside." "Let's go and we'll see," said Dinua indifferently. He slowly walked towards the door. They crossed the door and disappeared. They reappeared in a place where bestial qi hummed and filled the air. The atmosphere was thick and oppressive. Many people stared at them as soon as they entered. So many beasts, thought Lin Feng. He was surprised. The atmosphere was taut and ready to explode with violence. Suddenly, beasts roared, and his hairs bristled. He felt unsafe. "Since we're here, be careful. Otherwise, we'll be like them, and we'll never come out," Bai Yu advised plainly. Lin Feng's face stiffened, now realizing how dangerous this place was. They could get stuck inside. However, they had accepted Bai Yu's invitation without hesitation. and the 5 strong cultivators had wanted to go there for some time already. They had just never found anyone to come with them. It was why they had accepted immediately. For them, cultivators at the top of the Dichi layer, it was difficult to find enemies who were as strong as them. This place was an opportunity. Everybody nodded agreement and continued walking. This was the legendary king of the 10,000 beasts territory. According to legends, battles were bloody and difficult on the periphery, but cultivators had to go through those fierce battles to get to the central part of the territory. Bestial chi became more and more intense. They heard some birds flapping their wings. They were all emperors, powerful with gigantic wings, frozen in some half-human, half-beast forms. I've heard that there were many terrifying beasts in the king of the 10,000 beasts territory. It wasn't a lie. The great imperial beasts behind them must be their leaders, said the dark golden-pupiled king, looking far into the distance. Let's go and kill the great imperial beasts, said Qinghai's rock calmly. He opened his cyan wings and slowly rose up into the air before shooting ahead. How fast? Murmured Lin Feng when he saw Qinghai's rock leave. There were tens of thousands of beasts there. Lin Feng hadn't imagined there were such places. It was an ocean of beasts. Pitch-black claws moved towards Qinghai's rock. However, he was too fast. He opened his beak, sharp cyan lights emerged, and in the blink of an eye, he destroyed an ocean of beasts. Interesting. Heezy's Maharaja laughed. He also moved forwards. He spat poison far into the distance. His poison invaded all the imperial beasts who got too close and destroyed them. They fell from the sky one after another. The dark golden-pupiled king also rose up into the air, his eyes shining. A strong wind swept across the area. The atmosphere became distorted, and it started raining blood. Beasts' corpses fell from the sky, one after another. Dinua also rose up into the air, and a sword streaked across the sky. It killed all the beasts in his way. Lin Feng watched calmly. There was an ocean of beasts, but these posed no threat to them. Those 5 people were too strong. For those 5 beasts, this place was like the celestial country for Lin Feng. When he was there, mountains of corpses quickly appeared around him, wherever he went. Baiyu was also extremely strong. Sound waves kept spreading out all around her. Imperial beasts couldn't stand a single attack against her. Thousands of beasts fell from the sky one after another. Lin Feng also flashed forwards. He released death lights around himself, and death stamps, which turned into a river and slew an incredible amount of beasts rapidly. He controlled Death Dao. He didn't fear those imperial beasts. Why would he? Chapter 2246. Avenging Spirit. Lin Feng and the others wouldn't have been able to resist against thousands of beasts attacking them at the same time. But they were extremely fast, especially Qinghai's rock. He was a great emperor, and his speed was unparalleled. In the crowd, no attack reached him. Each time he flapped his wings, many birds fell from the sky. Heezy's Maharaja kept spitting out poison clouds around many imperial beasts, and each time his poison exploded, they rotted to death and fell from the sky. The beasts roared furiously. Lin Feng's death strength surged. Millions of threads of death stamps and deployment lights swept everything away. Beasts kept falling from the sky. Die! Lin Feng's eyes were filled with death strength. He looked at a beast, and that beast died instantly. One glance, and he could kill imperial beasts. At the same time, he continued releasing death lights. No beast could stop him. The 9 cultivators were a terrifying force. Very quickly, there were tens of thousands of corpses on the ground, forming small hills. Blood rivers quickly appeared around those mountains of corpses. We just entered, and the first wave of beasts was so impressive. I wonder what awaits us, mused Lin Feng and the others, even though they had done pretty well already. They didn't relax. On the contrary, they were even more vigilant. This was just the beginning. If the simple soldiers in these armies of beasts were already this terrifying, how strong would the leaders be? Baiyu, before Great Emperor Bai died, he came here. However, do you think we can really succeed and get to the king of the 10,000 beasts territory? The dark golden-pupiled king asked Baiyu at that moment. Since we're here, we'll see, replied Baiyu indifferently. They continued moving forwards, following Baiyu. After a short time, They arrived in a foreboding place. There was nothing on the land at all. There were millions of dead strong cultivators on the ground, but there was no beast in sight. Sometimes the group noticed fires but otherwise nothing. They could sense resentment and hatred. What the hell is this place? A ghost place? Asked Qing Yi, feeling cold and scared. He had the impression he was facing an army of ghosts. Shouldn't we make a detour? You can take a detour by yourself, replied Bai Yu, without even glancing at him. Qing Yi's grimaced. He had to control his fear and follow along. This place just seemed extremely dangerous. They continued moving forwards. The resentment and hatred seemed to be intensifying as they moved forwards. They even saw some lights moving under their feet. What the hell's is going on? Said Heezy's Maharaga, spitting out poison chi. The white lights instantly disappeared. Maybe there are avenging spirits here. There could be a monumental number of them, mused Dinua carelessly. The others shivered. Avenging spirits. Ah, Qing Yi shouted. White lights crawled up on his body, and he was covered by them. Piss off, he shouted, releasing bestial chi. An invisible and intangible light crawled up his body. A blade appeared, and strong wind started blowing. The white lights slowly disappeared. However, strange white lights appeared in Qing Yi's eyes. Die! Shouted Qing Yi, closing his eyes. He seemed to be fighting inside of his head. After a short time, he reopened his eyes. He looked normal, save that his eyes still looked strange. Evil avenging spirits. They're terrifying. They want to devour our minds. Be careful, whispered Qing Yi. Everybody knew they had to be careful. They continued walking forwards. Each time they took a step, lights twinkled. As they moved forwards, the white lights grew faster and more intense. Lin Feng sensed that many invisible and intangible avenging spirits wanted to penetrate into his body and occupy his brain. Lin Feng's heart was suddenly filled with resentment and hatred. He wanted to kill. He was depressed, furious, and unhappy. The invisible and intangible strength was influencing him. Piss off, shouted Lin Feng. His body turned gray. He released death stamps inside his own body. His Dao power destroyed the avenging spirits instantly. They could not resist his Dao power. Lin Feng and the others gradually sped up. However, that place was vast and boundless. Even if we kill all the avenging spirits, the resentment and hatred will still influence us, thought Lin Feng. At that moment, a terrifying white avenging spirit penetrated into his brain, and he immediately released his soul. Piss off. Using his soul, Lin Feng bombarded the avenging spirit with death stamps. However, the avenging spirit just howled furiously. Surprisingly, it spat out an incredible amount of resentment and hatred strength, which collided against his death strength. At the same time, the ghost released more resentment and hatred strength, which drove into Lin Feng's brain. Lin Feng shivered. Death stamps surrounded the resentment and hatred strength, and pierced through the avenging spirit's invisible body. It wanted to destroy his soul. That ghost looked like a ghost king. Die! Lin Feng released Death Kulpa swords. Lin Feng's soul had gone through a lot, and he had been cleansed by Devamara Kulpa strength. His jet black Death Kulpa swords were deadly. He slowly destroyed all the threads of resentment and hatred strength, and then they drove towards the avenging spirit. The avenging spirit howled furiously. It wanted to escape, but Lin Feng didn't let it flee. He released his godly awareness and his sky palace, as well as terrifying demon Kulpa strength. They surrounded the ghost and instantly crushed it. The ghost exploded and turned into millions of lights. The threads of the ghost moved towards Lin Feng's brain again, including the threads of resentment and hatred strength. Lin Feng destroyed them again and took a deep breath. That avenging spirit was extremely strong. Apart from Lin Feng, Bai Yu also got attacked by all sorts of avenging spirits. Even though they were now expecting it, it was getting more and more dangerous. At that moment, Lin Feng and the others suddenly gazed into the distance and saw gigantic white avenging spirits. Their resentment and hatred energies condensed. Their eyes were empty and emotionless, and they were staring at Lin Feng and the others. The gigantic avenging spirits didn't only have human shapes, some of them also had animal shapes. White lights twinkled in their eyes. They looked extremely dangerous. So many avenging spirits. Hundreds of them, said Lin Feng, releasing Devamara Culpa strength. He had noticed that the avenging spirits didn't like that kind of strength. They were like us at the beginning, I suppose. And then avenging spirits occupied their brains, and they turned into ghosts. If they managed to occupy our brains, we'd also turn into ghosts, said Baiyu. Everyone's faces stiffened, and they all released impressive energies solemnly. How exciting, said the dark golden-pupiled king coolly. He turned into a vortex, a strong wind condensed and turned into a hurricane. He moved towards a gigantic avenging spirit in front of him, and the avenging spirit instantly disappeared. How strong! The dark golden-pupiled king is really gifted. That must be one of his innate powers, thought Lin Feng. Talent was carved into Lin Feng's genetic code. It was probably the same for the dark golden-pupiled king. Dinua also attacked. He waved his hands and swords filled the air. They turned into beam of lights, and he destroyed avenging spirits one after another. He looked extremely calm and serene throughout the process. However, his strength was explosive. Qingyi was looking at the 5 cultivators in front of him. Qinghai's rock, Heezi's Maharaga, the dark golden-pupiled king, Zishi's flood dragon, Dinua's sword, they were all terrifying. The difference between them and him was huge. An avenging spirit charged Qingyi. Even though he was also a great emperor, the 5 others could easily kill the avenging spirits, but he couldn't. But since they were 9 people, they still managed to destroy all of the spirits and continue on. They killed hundreds and hundreds of avenging spirits. Nothing could stop them. They drew closer and closer to the central area of the King of the 10,000 Beasts territory. Chapter 2247. Disappearance of strong cultivators. Finally, the 9 people saw an ancient door. However, between them and the door, everything was colored red. Out of that redness, a terrifying chi emerged that set their hairs on end. If we cross that area, we'll reach the real part of King of the 10,000 Beasts territory, said Baiyu. Lin Feng and the others frowned. Finally, the legendary land, the King of the 10,000 Beasts territory. What was there? They had heard that many terrifying ancient beasts gathered there. Apparently, it was a heaven for beasts. There were many legends about the area. At that moment, Lin Feng and the others looked enthusiastic. They had killed so many beasts to get this far. What is this place? Whispered Qingyi, gazing into the distance. Nothing had surprised them so far, but they remained vigilant. Let's try and we'll see, said Qinghai's rock, moving forwards. He flapped his wings and turned into a beam of light. When he entered the redness, it felt like he had flown into moving sands. He was flying much slower. He could barely flap his wings. He frowned. Lin Feng and the others looked worried. What is this place? Repeated Heezi's Maharaga. The redness in the air turned into an invisible and intangible strength, which kept attacking Qinghai's rock. But that kind of strength didn't seem to be caused by someone. It was inherent to this place. Condensation of ancient dead animals' intent. Their Tao and intent is here, said Qinghai's rock. Suddenly the air began to hum. He was suddenly surrounded by cyan lights, and moved to destroy them instantly. Qinghai's rock is extremely fast. That kind of strength can't really stop him. Zishi's flood dragon also started flying ahead. The air began to rumble and shake. When he penetrated into that strength, he suddenly started moving slower as well. He shouted loudly and struck out as hard as he could. He even managed to move faster than Qinghai's rock. Oh, he's relying on strength. A kind of strength is slowing Qinghai's rock and Zishi's flood dragon down. Because Zishi's flood dragon is really strong, he has an advantage here. Baiyu and the others also entered the red area, including Lin Feng. After entering the area, Lin Feng sensed a terrifying strength surround him. It was extremely heavy, and made his soul tremble. Great imperial beast's thoughts penetrated into his body, and his body suddenly felt numb. He had the impression he had the whole world on his shoulders. No wonder it was composed of Tao strength and intent. Lin Feng jumped ahead. Surrounded by demon lights, his eyes pitch black. Nothing could corrode his body. A red beam of light shot towards him, attacking his soul. Piss off, shouted Lin Feng furiously. He released Death Culpa swords, which attacked the ray and destroyed it. However, he didn't relax. These red energies were dangerous. The 9 cultivators pressed forward with an indomitable will. It was difficult, but nobody flinched. What is this place? How come there are such terrifying energies here? Do they really come from dead animals? Wondered Lin Feng. But it was just for a second before he refocused on the path. Dinua's sword was the first one to get close to the door. When he arrived in front of it, he immediately crossed it and disappeared. Zishu's flood dragon roared furiously, the earth and sky shaking around him. He destroyed all the energies in his way and reached the ancient door. After that, the dark golden-pupiled king, Qinghai's rock, Heezi's Maharaja, Baiyu, Lin Feng and the others also arrived. Nothing stopped them. When Lin Feng crossed the door, he appeared on a platform. He wasn't alone. Baiyu and the others were there too. Lin Feng was speechless, because there were people everywhere. They looked at Lin Feng and the others and seemed amused. Lin Feng sensed something. He followed the crowd's gazes and saw a curtain of light. On it Qingyi, Baiyu and her maid appeared. Their journey through the red area flashed up on the light screen, and everybody could see how much they had struggled. Lin Feng's face stiffened. Had the crowd been watching their journey from the beginning to the end? Lin Feng glanced around. It was a beast city and animal world. There were animal buildings everywhere. The buildings had all sorts of shapes. Some of them had the shape of an ox, thousands of meters high. Some had the shapes of apes, some of dragons. There were gigantic beasts in the air. Bats, eagles, great rocks, dragons with long black wings. All of them looking in their direction. This is the real king of the 10,000 beasts territory. It's an animal heaven, thought Lin Feng. His heart was pounding. Qinghai's rock, and the others were also stupefied at this reception. "Little boy, you're here too," exclaimed a voice at that moment. Qinghai's rock was surprised and turned around. There was a middle-aged man there, wearing a cape. When Qinghai's rock saw him, he was astonished and blurted out, "You're Uncle Ox." "Indeed. You're a grown-up now. You've become extremely strong. Your parents must be proud of you," said the middle-aged man. He had 2 horns on his head, and was smiling gently. Qinghai's rock had known him since he was a child. Qinghai's rock's father had good relations with the ox. Now, Qinghai's rock had met him in the king of the 10,000 beasts territory. "Uncle Ox, what are you doing here?" said Qinghai's rock, looking confused. "Not only me. Your father is here too," said the middle-aged man patiently. Qinghai's rock's expression changed. He trembled and asked, "My father is alive? Of course, did you think he was dead? He's here, and on top of that, he's an officer here," said the middle-aged man calmly. Qinghai's rock trembled. "Since it's that way, why didn't he come to see me?" Qinghai's rock didn't understand. He was perplexed. The middle-aged man smiled and shook his head. "It's the king of the 10,000 beasts territory here." "You poisonous vermin, here we meet again," said someone else. This time, Heezi's Maharaja was astonished, staring at a figure. That person looked horrible. He had pustules all over, and he looked terrifying. "It's you. You disappeared 200 years ago, and now you're here," exclaimed Heezi's Maharaja, staring at that person. His heart was pounding. The person was extremely strong. Even though he wasn't very talented, he was an extremely strong warrior. "Indeed. I came here 200 years before you. You old poisonous vermin, you're so slow," said the one who looked horrible with a smile. "You old monster, you're a celestial emperor. When did you break through to the Tiandi layer?" asked Heezi's Maharaja. "Haha, over 150 years ago. Surprisingly, you haven't broken through," replied that person, laughing loudly. He looked amused. Heezi's Maharaja pulled a long face. "Over 150 years, how strong? What is this place exactly?" asked Heezi's Maharaja. He was annoyed. That beast used to be as strong as him in the past, and now he had broken through 150 years ago. "King of the 10,000 beasts territory. You will love it here," that person smiled. Heezi's Maharaja's heart was pounding. Baiyu and the others glanced around. Back then, many beasts disappeared from the 8 great imperial animal cities. Did they come here? The dark golden-pupiled king to the crowd. In the outside world, many people had heard of cultivators who had died, but actually, they had come to the king of the 10,000 beasts territory. But those were only legends. Now, however, the newcomers understood that many of those beasts hadn't actually died. Chapter 2248. King of the 10,000 Beasts World Qing-yi. Bai Yu and Bai Yu's maid were astonished. It was indeed an animal world. It was an independent animal world. Since we're in the King of the 10,000 Beasts territory, his world, what about the King of the 10,000 Beasts city? Is it a legend? Does it exist? Asked the dark golden-pupiled king, glancing at the crowd. It's the world created by King of the 10,000 Beasts, replied someone. You came to the King of the 10,000 Beasts territory because you want to go the King of 10,000 Beasts city, right? But you'll just be like most beasts who come here. How can we know if we don't try? Said Bai Yu calmly. She had come for the King of the 10,000 Beasts city. Your great Emperor Bai's descendant, right? A short time ago, he left the King of the 10,000 Beasts city. Someone said to Bai Yu. Great Emperor Bai was a real genius, but he was too curious. He acted dangerously. The King of the 10,000 Beasts is a dangerous creature. Great Emperor Bai was doomed. Bai Yu's face stiffened. She stared at that strong cultivator and asked, You knew that my father was going to die? That person was surrounded by bestial qi. It was impossible to see his face. However, from the outside he looked terrifying. Of course, Great Emperor Bai wanted to break through. It was impossible. You can't escape from the King of the 10,000 Beasts. Actually, the King of the 10,000 Beasts attached importance to Great Emperor Bai. But Great Emperor Bai decided to act on his own. He was doomed, said that person indifferently. Bai Yu's face was rigid. She was even more determined to go to King of the 10,000 Beasts city. From what I know, anyone who comes to the King of the 10,000 Beasts territory can go to King of the 10,000 Beasts city, right? Bai Yu pressed. Indeed, but only one opportunity, said that person indifferently. We want to go to the King of 10,000 Beasts city, said Bai Yu, staring at the man. Each time someone comes here, it's to go to King of the 10,000 Beasts city. You're no exception, smiled that person. When you go to King of the 10,000 Beasts city, you will discover how powerful he is. Uncle Ox, I want to see my father, said Qinghai's rock at that moment. The ox nodded and said, Naturally. Are they your friends? You can go together. Qinghai's rock looked at the others. Easy's Maharaga's eyes twinkled and he nodded. You can meet in the King of the 10,000 Beasts territory first. Come with me. The ox's figure flickered. He rose up into the air. Lin Feng and the others followed, and they flew together between the many immense and spectacular castles. How old is the King of the 10,000 Beasts? Asked Lin Feng, curious now. Did the King of the 10,000 Beasts really exist? Was it only a legend? According to legends, he's extremely old. But not many beasts have seen him for real. I've heard that this world is tens of thousands of years old already. Therefore, if the King of the 10,000 Beasts really exists, he must be extremely old, maybe hundreds of thousands of years old, replied Bai Yu. Lin Feng took a deep breath. Hundreds of thousands of years, how impressive. Of course the King of the 10,000 Beasts exists. Besides, you will also understand that he's not only the king here, he's the king of all animals in the world, said the ox with awe and veneration. The King of the 10,000 Beasts was a sort of supreme god in his heart. They flew above many castles before arriving in front of a gigantic castle, which had the form of a great rock. The great rock was bigger than many other buildings. Its sculpted wings were gigantic. It looked like a great rock which had been petrified and turned a real castle. The ox landed with the small group and entered the castle. There were many beasts inside and many battle stages. There was an army of beasts wearing armor, too, all of them great rocks. Their eyes looked as sharp as eagle's eyes. Even in their human shapes, they had gigantic wings in their backs. They also had beaks which contained a sharp qi. Their beaks and wings were similar to those of Qinghai's rock and Qingyi. What a powerful army, thought Lin Feng quietly. The army of great rocks was formidable. The ordinary great rocks were all emperors at the top of the Huangqi layer. The officers were all great emperors. Lin Feng sensed a qi similar to Qinghai's rock's qi emerging from them. The King of the 10,000 Beasts gathered many heroes. They're all incredible, obstinate and unruly. Therefore, they have to have a powerful army to keep strong beasts under control. They're in charge of making sure that the rules are applied, no matter how strong you are. Even though many beasts come here, they all have to respect the rules. With your fighting abilities, you could all become small leaders, explained the ox. He walked over to a small group. Your father has the highest military rank in here. He has many divisions under his control. When 100 divisions are together, they form an army. A commander-in-chief leads them. Lin Feng and the others were impressed. Lin Feng asked, "How big is the king of the 10,000 beasts territory?" Bai Yu and the others looked excited. They also wanted to know how big it was. It has existed for a very long time. At the beginning, they were bored, but then more and more beasts came, and they started expanding. Now it's not a territory anymore, it's a world. A military faction consists of millions of beasts. The king of the 10,000 beasts personal army is composed of over 10,000 beasts. They are all the strongest heroes. Lin Feng shivered. This world had existed for hundreds of thousands of years, and already had billions of beasts. Beasts lived for an extremely long time, especially the strongest ones. Are there other worlds? Asked Bai Yu. Of course. We're not in the outside world. Everything is perfectly organized here. Because mortality rates are low, the armies become stronger and stronger. And the king of the 10,000 beasts has created rules. When people have children, they must go to other worlds. They can't keep in touch with their parents. Even officers can't break the rules. Only when they are strong enough can they return and meet again with their parents. Of course, they must want to come back. Sometimes they enjoy the worlds in which they live. What does the king of the 10,000 beasts want to do? Asked Lin Feng. A perfect organization. A world composed of heroes, many strong cultivators, many worlds, very old place. Did the king of the 10,000 beasts want to create a world as big as the continent of the 9 clouds? That kind of organization reminded Lin Feng of hell, rules, officers. Had the king of the 10,000 beasts world become as wide as hell? Though? How many worlds are there? Asked Qinghai's rock. You'll see. You'll also become a member of this world. We're here, said the ox at that moment. They arrived in front of a golden great rock building. It was spectacular. Did the king of great rocks live in there? Officer Rock, said the ox at that moment. The army of great rocks recognizing him and letting him pass. Brother Ox, replied a voice. A strong wind started blowing. A dignified and majestic middle-aged man appeared in front of them. He looked very similar to Qinghai's rock. However, his chi was sharper. When he saw Qinghai's rock, his eyes looked even sharper. Father, said Qinghai's rock when he saw that person. Good little boy. No wonder you're my son. You're here too, said the middle-aged man, laughing loudly. All the great rocks in the area trembled, his voice was so loud. And his son was here? Incredible. Father, I thought you were dead, but actually you were here. You never told me why? Asked Qinghai's rock. I didn't need to tell you. You were strong enough. I didn't need to protect you, said the officer loudly and firmly. Chapter 2249. Dreamlike life. Qinghai's rock was stupefied and could only nod. What about mother? Where is she? She's dead. She died in war, said the officer calmly, like he was talking about something ordinary. Qinghai's rock's heart started pounding. Dead. Don't think about it. She's dead. No need to miss her. Work hard and become stronger. That way, you'll become an officer like me. You'll avenge your mother, said the officer to Qinghai's rock coldly. Who killed her? Asked Qinghai's rock. I'll tell you when the right time comes, said officer firmly. Qinghai's rock asked. I'm going to king of the 10,000 beast city. How is it there? Since you came here, you'll go to king of the 10,000 beast city obviously. I'll take you there, said the officer. He snapped open his gigantic wings. The crowd sensed a terrifying wind carrying them along. After a short time, they arrived in front of a door. That's a teleportation portal. It can take you to the gates of king of the 10,000 beast city. There will be a few gates, said the officer. Lin Feng and the others nodded and entered the door. They appeared in another world, with 7 doors before them. 7 doors. Bai Yu, Was that why you wanted 7 people to come? Asked Qing Yi to buy you. I just knew that my father faced 7 doors. I will investigate his death. Therefore, when we come out, we'll share what we discover, alright? Bai Yu asked Lin Feng and the others. We'll talk about that when we come out, said Heezy's Maharaga. His eyes twinkled. His old friend had surpassed him 150 years ago. He wanted to see what there was in King of the 10,000 Beasts City. His figure flickered, and he entered a door. Let's go in first, said Qing Hai's rock. His figure flickered as well, choosing another door. The dark golden pupiled king also chose another door. There were 7 doors. Bai Yu's plan was 1 person, 1 door. If an incident occurred, she would have gone in with her maid, but the 9 of them were safe and sound, so they needed a solution. Lin Feng walked over to one of the doors. To his surprise, a vortex appeared and surrounded him. No! Lin Feng stopped. His soul was being absorbed. His soul seemed to travel across space and time. Lin Feng's soul was outside his body. However, he realized that struggling was useless. He felt tiny and powerless. A celestial path. Continent of the 9 clouds, you created a world, a king's path, said a voice in Lin Feng's mind. He trembled as an old man appeared in front of him. He was wearing a king's robe and had the demeanor of a transcendent being. He looked extraordinary, like a peerless cultivator. Who are you? Shouted Lin Feng. However, his voice was barely audible. Lin Feng continued trembling. He suddenly realized he was in a child's body and talking like a child. However, his soul was independent. He wasn't one with the child's body, he was just stuck in it. And just before, the child had spoken. Who are they? What's wrong with King of the 10,000 Beast City? Lin Feng didn't understand what was going on. The man in front of him nodded and petted his head. He smiled and said, Little Tian, you will go to the continent of the 9 clouds and become a king. Those are your teacher's teachings. Bear them in mind, said a voice. The child smiled innocently. Then, he hugged the middle-aged man and taught the child about cultivation. Lin Feng had the impression he was personally on the scene. Lin Feng had the impression time passed quickly. He was growing up. He traveled in the continent. He had furious battles. Little Tian killed millions of strong cultivators. And suddenly, he didn't look like a child anymore. He looked like someone who had gone through lots of hardships in life. Phew! Little Tian walked into the distance. He practiced cultivation. He saw his teacher. He looked mature and cold. When he saw his teacher, he suddenly looked like a child again. His teacher loved him and taught him all he could. Time passed. Little Tian was growing older and older. Lin Feng didn't know how many years had passed. He lost the notion of time. It looked fake and real at the same time. Was he Little Tian? He shared everything with him. Today, Little Tian became a great emperor. However, he was crying in the middle of a crowd, holding a beautiful woman in his arms. He loved her, but he hadn't managed to save her. He was crying blood. Finally, he put the woman at the top of a mountain and looked at the crowd savagely. He started killing them. A river of blood started flowing down the mountain. From that moment, he started acting coldly, even in front of the most beautiful women in the world from the pain in his heart. However, no matter what, when he went back home, he was always happy, and warmth always filled his heart. Like Lin Feng when he went back to Yangzhou City. Little Tian grew up, becoming stronger and stronger. He faced many difficulties and had insane battles. Each time Lin Feng felt nervous, like he had lived Little Tian's life in real time. But at the same time, he understood that to become a peerless cultivator, he had to go through such things, no matter whether someone was good or evil. One day Little Tian built his own world. Many people respected him. He already looked a bit old. His eyes were filled with stars of wisdom. Another time, Little Tian finally got married. He hadn't forgotten his first love, but he loved his new wife too. He had already become a saint emperor. He had a wife and descendants. Time passed, and Little Tian had many grandchildren. He was old, and at the top of the Shengdi layer. Finally, Little Tian did all he could to break through. And he did. He had his own world, and he created a terrifying spell. On that day, he went back to his family. Teacher. The middle-aged man looked old now. Little Tian was surprised. He was catching up with his teacher. His teacher was old now. "Little Tian, you're back," said the old man sitting at the foot of a mountain. He was smiling. Little Tian walked up to him and knelt down. No matter how strong he was, he would always respect his teacher. "I'm old now. I'm happy to see you're so strong." Little Tian raised his head and smiled. "You will break through, teacher. I will do my best to help you." "Is that so? You will help your teacher?" said the old man, shaking his head. "I will do my best," said Little Tian. He was already a peerless cultivator, but in front of his teacher, he would always be a child. "All right, help me. I want to see what you've gone through these years," said the old man, smiling in a gently. "All right," Little Tian nodded. He closed his eyes. His teacher put his hand on Little Tian's head and said, "Open your mind and let me see." Little Tian nodded and let go. After a long time, Little Tian opened his eyes. He looked extremely sad. He had tears in his eyes. He never thought he would cry again after what had happened. But he was wrong. "Teacher, why?" shouted Little Tian. It was the first time he shouted in front of his teacher. "I can give you anything, but why?" He didn't understand why he was suffering so much. His heart ached. He respected his teacher the most. When he was desperate, he thought of his teacher. Lin Feng was crying too. He had experienced Little Tian's life. His heart ached. "Silly boy. For strength, you must forgive everything," said the old man kindly. A terrifying strength surrounded Little Tian's body, soul, and memories. Chapter 2250. 81 lives after that, Little Tian didn't die. He killed his teacher. He saw his teacher's desperate look, but he looked indifferent. He had no emotions anymore. He had been betrayed by the person he respected the most. He had done all his teacher had asked him. He had taken risks. He had shown him all his memories. However, the old man had attacked him. It was a true tragedy. Life was cruel. He had become cold and indifferent, apathetic. His teacher's love had become an illusion. He had created a saint's technique. And then he had killed his teacher. However, he wasn't excited at all. He was just sad and felt nostalgic. That wasn't the reason why he had decided to break through. It wasn't the reason why he had gone through so much. Suddenly, the illusion dispersed. Lin Feng suddenly felt much more relaxed. Little Tian raised his head and looked at Lin Feng's soul. Lin Feng's heart was trembling. Did Little Tian know he existed? What had just happened? "What do you think about my life?" Little Tian asked Lin Feng's soul. He sounded indifferent. Lin Feng's heart was pounding. He hadn't had time to calm down. He had just lived someone else's entire life. "How moving and touching," sighed Lin Feng. He had experienced Little Tian's life from the beginning to the end. He had experienced his life as a baby and grown old with him. How could Lin Feng remain stoic? "Who are you?" Lin Feng asked Little Tian. "You arrived in my territory, and you ask me who I am?" asked Little Tian calmly. Lin Feng took a deep breath. He wasn't wrong. He had guessed right. Little Tian was the king of the 10,000 beasts. However, why wasn't he a beast? "You're strange. Why isn't the king of the 10,000 beasts a beast? Maybe you would be surprised if you saw what was behind those doors," said Little Tian calmly. He knew what Lin Feng was thinking. Who said the king of the 10,000 beasts had to be a beast? "You're a human, but you're here, right?" said the king of the 10,000 beasts, answering his own question. Everything was natural. He said calmly. Of course, when the king of the 10,000 beasts was a beast, perhaps his life was different from what you could experience or feel. But it's also true. A life is a life. It's the life of the king of the 10,000 beasts in any case. "How many lives has the king of the 10,000 beasts had?" asked Lin Feng. He didn't understand. "The king of the 10,000 beasts has lived many lives," said Little Tian calmly. He didn't look sad or hopeless anymore. Lin Feng had the impression he was hallucinating. A moment ago, it had felt like he had been sad and hopeless. Not the king of the 10,000 beasts. "Why did you create king of the 10,000 beast city? Why do you make people come here? Why do you make people go through what you have lived?" asked Lin Feng, trying to calm down. "I want people to understand what the life of a strong cultivator looks like. I want them to understand that sometimes, what you try to have in life can only be an illusion. Your world can collapse anytime. I want them to understand what a life is, said little Tian slowly. Just like you, that life has had an incredible impact on you. So what? Asked Lin Feng calmly. So you'll be even more determined in the future and stronger. You made many worlds, which comprise the king of the 10,000 beasts world. Why? Asked Lin Feng. To understand my life. At least, you understand that no matter how strong someone is, including peerless cultivators, they can drift and live without purpose, or drag out an ignoble existence. They cry too. Everyone has similar feelings, answered the king of the 10,000 beasts. He slowly turned around and looked at the sky, continuing evenly. Nobody should be arrogant. Everybody is the same when they die. Everyone becomes ordinary when they die. When you reach the top, your existence can be meaningless. Lin Feng looked at the king of the 10,000 beasts back. His heart was pounding. No wonder the beasts admired him. He was humble, an extraordinary being. But he was not arrogant. It was his conception, his perception. It applied to everyone though, whether they accepted it or not. After hearing such stories, people did their best to progress. They were determined, but they didn't take themselves too seriously. Who do you want to sacrifice? The supreme animal world? The imperial court of the continent of the 9 clouds? All the shrines? Asked Lin Feng. The king of the 10,000 beasts was startled, and cold lights flashed in his eyes. He turned around and looked at Lin Feng. Since you've had many lives, little Tian is one of your lives. It's not your current body, which means that you're much stronger now. You want to control them. You want to control everything, said Lin Feng casually. The king of the 10,000 beasts was staring at Lin Feng. He looked surprised but smiled and said, I like you. Before you there was another guy I liked, Great Emperor Bai. Unfortunately, he wanted to control things too much. He didn't want to help me. But I'm convinced you can help me. Even if you're only at the top of the Huangqi layer, I can let you experience my 81 lives. I guarantee you that within 50 years, you'll become a saint emperor if you experience my 81 lives. 81 lives? You've had 81 lives? Lin Feng was astonished. How awesome! Each of his lives might have lasted for hundreds of thousands of years. The king of the 10,000 beasts had led 81 lives. He had reincarnated 81 times. His understanding of cultivation was probably terrifying. If Lin Feng experienced 81 lives, he would probably understand cultivation much better. Indeed, 81 lives. I can easily form an army of great emperors. A few hundreds of years are enough, not to mention that I've spent a long time here, said the king of the 10,000 beasts with a smile. Lin Feng found that kind of smile scary. The king of the 10,000 beasts probably knew a lot. Lin Feng had heard that there were some terrifying cultivators in the continent of the 9 clouds who had lived for as long as the king of the 10,000 beasts. Were they from the same era? Did he want to surpass those people? Were they competing? In the ancient days, some shrines had been destroyed. Some others had been created. Some others had risen. Was it like that in the king of the 10,000 beasts world? This world is way too complex and mysterious, thought Lin Feng. There were so many mysteries in the world. Little Tian had only seen the continent a little bit. He had lived a different life. He had chosen a different path. All right, I will first let you experience 7 lives. You will understand a lot. If you want to assimilate, then learn slowly. There is no hurry, said the king of the 10,000 beasts patiently. Lin Feng sensed his soul shaking. The king of the 10,000 beasts was controlling his soul again. Chapter 2251. Another life. Lin Feng's soul went back into his body. However, at that moment, it felt like everything had changed in his life. He had experienced someone else's life, but it had felt so real, enough that he had the impression he had really lived that life. He couldn't forget those memories. Won't little Tian's life influence my own life? Thought Lin Feng. If he perceived that life as something that helped him improve on the path of cultivation, then it was good. But if he perceived it as his own, then it could be problematic. He wouldn't be Lin Feng then. He'd be a mixture of Lin Feng and little Tian. But it had been, and still seemed so real. When his soul was in little Tian's body, he felt like he really was little Tian. However, Lin Feng didn't think about that too much. A terrifying absorbing strength surrounded his body again. His soul was taken away once again. He left his body. Lin Feng understood that the king of the 10,000 beasts was making him experience another life. Lin Feng took a deep breath mentally. He hadn't even had time to assimilate one life, and he was already going to experience another one. Wouldn't Lin Feng forget who he was if he continued? Because he really had the impression that that life was his own. Snowflakes float around. A sword twinkles in the sunlight, said a voice at that moment. Lin Feng was standing in a snowy field in another body. He was performing a sword dance. Each time he used his sword, snowflakes floated around. The sun was shining, the snow kept glittering. It was a sword cultivator. He looked clean. He was a sword cultivator of the Zunqi layer, and already controlled several sorts of abstruse energies. Fellow disciple, said someone at that moment. Lin Feng saw a beautiful woman, as white as snow, clean and beautiful. The young man smiled broadly when he saw her, as if his heart had melted. Fellow disciple, get ready. A dazzling sword moved towards the young man. He smiled and raised his sword. The two cultivators exchanged views on cultivation, both performing a sword dance. It was a beautiful scene. After that, they got tired and snuggled in the snow. The beautiful woman put her head on the young man's shoulder and smiled. Fellow disciple, our older fellow disciple is extremely talented. He wants to ask our teacher for a marriage alliance. The young man's face stiffened and turned pale. Finally, it was happening. Can't you ask our teacher for a few more years to wait for me? The young man knew he was weaker than his older fellow disciple, but he was determined to become stronger for his female fellow disciple. How many years? I will surpass our older fellow disciple within 5 years, said the young man. He looked determined. The young woman smiled, kissed him on the forehead, and said while leaving, leave the mountain. I will definitely wait for you for 5 years. The young man scratched his head and smiled. He looked determined as he replied, definitely. Then he stood up, carrying his sword on his back, and went down the mountain. After that, the young man traveled for 5 years. He went to forbidden areas. He traveled the world. He looked for extremely powerful spells, skills, and techniques. He forgot about everything. He exchanged views on cultivation with many sword cultivators. He created his own sword attacks. Within 5 years, he killed many people. Finally, he went back to the snowy mountain. He had succeeded and become much stronger. He was already a low-level emperor. When he saw his female fellow disciple, he was so happy. They slept together, but then the young man became extremely sad. He realized it wasn't her first time, but because he loved her, he decided not to mention it. However, on the second day, when he woke up, she had already disappeared. She had just left a letter written in her own blood. Fellow disciple, I'm so sorry, our older fellow disciple, he raped me. I lost my honor. I don't deserve you. Don't look for me. Someday, when you become the king of the snowy mountain, get rid of that vermin. I will come and see you. Lin Feng felt despondent. He was that young man. He felt like that young man. He shouted furiously. Sword intent filled the air and made the small room explode. He felt guilty. He had to avenge her. On that day, he went to see his older fellow disciple and fought against him. He hated him. His older fellow disciple hated him too, though, because they loved the same woman. Both sides suffered losses. Their teacher defended his older fellow disciple, however. He cut one of his arms and said, insolent bastard, useless disciple, piss off. Never come back to the snowy mountain. The teacher was furious, and the young man was crushed. He didn't know whether their teacher had contributed to this tragedy or not. He kept thinking about what his female fellow disciple had said. He was desperate, hopeless, and crushed. Once again, he went down the mountain. Everything in life, love, intimacy, hatred, all those things required energy. All those things also made people stronger. Lin Feng was like that, and that young man was like that too. Everybody had sad stories to tell in life. The young man went down the mountain and traveled the world. He nearly died several times. He met many people. Many things happened. However, he remained cold. His heart was frozen. One letter written with blood had had such consequences. People who managed to reach the top all had heartbreaking stories to tell. The young man nearly died a few times, but each time he was lucky. He always managed to survive. Strong cultivators all had a common point: they were determined. The young man was extremely determined. He broke through to the Diqi layer and became a great emperor. He went back to the snowy mountain. However, he didn't see his enemies or the woman he loved. He asked about them everywhere. In the end, he learned that she had gotten married to a descendant of the Yong city's leader, and that she was considered the most beautiful woman of the city. In Yong City, a gigantic city, he saw his female junior fellow disciple. She was heartbroken. She told him she had almost died once. Because her husband had begged unceasingly, she had accepted becoming his wife. However, she still loved him. She had had the best moments of her life with him. She remembered when they used to exchange views on cultivation. She remembered their romance. But in the end she left. The young man was furious and determined to wipe out Yong City, regardless of the price. He slowly became demonic and dedicated his whole life to sword cultivation. He sacrificed everything he had to become a stronger sword cultivator. He killed millions of people. He didn't know what love was anymore. Time passed, many strong cultivators rose, many also fell. The young man went back to Yong City. He had changed already. He wasn't like in the past. He started killing millions of people in Yong City. On that day, he saw his elder fellow disciple, who had become a terrifying cultivator. Their eyes met with hatred. Apart from them, there were also some other terrifying cultivators. Their female junior fellow disciple's husband, the current leader of Yong City, and an evil cultivator. They didn't say anything. They just had a monstrous battle. Rivers of blood flowed in Yong City. Mountains of corpses were piled high. Finally, the young man won. He killed everyone. Fellow disciple. His female junior fellow disciple had become a symbol of peerless grace and elegance. She looked at him, feeling sad, but she also had affection for him. The young man looked calm and serene. He looked at her, not saying anything. Suddenly, a sword shot towards her and pierced through her chest. Her face turned deathly pale. She looked crushed, sad, and hopeless. She asked, "Why?" The young man gazed into the distance. Everything was destroyed around them. He looked apathetic about it all. "You were too strong," said the young man flatly. He already had white hair on his temples. He looked emotionless. "You shouldn't be that strong." And our older fellow disciple, I understood him. He looked me in the eyes. His eyes were filled with hatred. "And our teacher, he hurt me back in the days. He was furious, I knew why," said the young man calmly. The woman smiled and said, "So you knew. So why did you kill our older fellow disciple?" "I don't care. I dedicated half of my life to you. However, in the end, I realized it was useless to keep thinking about it because I had forgotten about it long ago," the young man said indifferently. Sword energies filled the air and cut apart everything. He didn't spend too much time explaining. Why would he? All those things were not important anymore. Everything vanished. Lin Feng and the young man appeared in another world. Lin Feng's soul came out of that body. The young man looked at Lin Feng and asked, "What did you think about that life?" Lin Feng remained silent for a long time. It was another life. He had experienced it very clearly. What a mysterious life. But again, it was the life of a strong cultivator. "I'm curious, how was your first life?" Lin Feng asked indifferently. The other smiled. "His first life? My first life was the most splendid and glorious one. However, it was also the most humiliating one," he replied, a cold rictus on the corner of his lips. That smile meant, "I now despise the whole world." Chapter 2252. Fighting Phantoms. The king of the 10,000 beasts' first life had been the most splendid and glorious one, but also the most humiliating one. Lin Feng didn't understand what that meant. However, he could imagine that kind of humiliation had made him what he had become. Now he was emotionless and so strong. He stood at the top, and he didn't care about anyone or anything. 5 more lives, and you will start understanding me," smiled the king of the 10,000 beasts. Once again, Lin Feng's soul emerged from his body. Each time Lin Feng lived one of the king of the 10,000 beasts' lives, he had the impression he had reincarnated. He didn't feel those lives were the king of the 10,000 beasts' lives. When Lin Feng experienced a few more lives, he felt confused. He hadn't even finished his own life, and he had experienced 7 of the King of the 10,000 Beasts' lives. As one could well imagine, it was a shocking experience. Lin Feng's soul was returned his body. He closed his eyes and forget about the outside world. He thought about all the things he had experienced. He kept telling himself that those lives weren't his, but the King of the 10,000 Beasts. He had just observed those lives. He couldn't let those lives influence him. He couldn't become like the King of the 10,000 Beasts. The 7 lives turned into 7 stars in his brain. Around the stars were his own memories. He couldn't mix them with the others. The King of the 10,000 Beasts' lives could be beneficial to him, as long as he didn't mix everything up. Lin Feng opened his eyes. He looked normal again. He inspected those lives using his own memories and experience, studying them from the outside. Lin Feng used the Celestial Evolution Holy Scriptures. However, this time, he didn't use the Celestial Evolution Holy Scriptures to modify strength. He used them to modify those memories, those lives. The Celestial Evolution Holy Scriptures were extremely powerful. They allowed him to study those memories while staying relatively safe. Using the things he had studied in the Fortune Shrine's archive hall, Lin Feng studied for 10 days and 10 nights. And after that, he felt exhausted and stopped. He frowned, opened his eyes and sighed. The King of the 10,000 Beasts, in each life, broke through after having understood something great. Each time, he loved his teachers, but in the end, everything becomes cold. In his second life, he was in love with his female junior fellow disciple. But then he became extremely strong and killed her. And at the same time he understood something great. All of this is related to the 8 distresses. You become emotionless as you become stronger. Apart from his first 2 lives, the 5 other ones were similar. He understood incredible things and changed. However, the King of the 10,000 Beasts and I are different. I'm at the top of the Huangqi layer, but I can't break through to the Diqi layer. The 10,000 things of creation originate from the same things. I control my own world, but it still needs to be improved. I don't know what will happen in the future. I don't know what my close ones will do in the future. However, I think I understand what to do now. Lin Feng stood up and walked into that world. That city was like another world indeed. It was different from all the worlds in which the King of the 10,000 Beasts had lived in his previous lives. Of course, when cultivators became stronger, their lives became similar, no matter what world they lived in. Someone came over to Lin Feng. It was the body the King of the 10,000 Beasts had in this life. He was in the sky, looking down at Lin Feng. You still haven't broken through to the Diqi layer, even though you've experienced my lives? The King of the 10,000 Beasts didn't understand. He had noticed Lin Feng's physical strength, soul, and comprehension were incredible. He had an incredible sense of judgment, and couldn't be mistaken about Lin Feng. Nevertheless, Lin Feng had experienced his lives and still hadn't broken through. As long as a cultivator remained determined, there was no reason for them not to break through. However, Lin Feng was still at the top of the Huangqi layer. King of the 10,000 Beasts, those are your lives. I studied them, but it was useless. My cultivation is different, I have my own life. Therefore, if I stay here, I won't be able to become stronger. I hope you'll let me leave this place, Lin Feng said calmly. You want to leave the King of the 10,000 Beasts territory? Repeated the King of the 10,000 Beasts. He didn't understand how Lin Feng felt. Yes, after studying your lives, I had the impression you were me. Perhaps many people who come here admire and respect you. And I respect and admire you too. However, I am still me. As you said, if I stand at the top, then nobody will humiliate me ever again. When I reach the top, I will come back and meet you again, I think, Lin Feng said calmly. The King of the 10,000 Beasts' eyes glittered as he stared at Lin Feng. Lin Feng would come back after reaching the top. He was truly self-confident. Apart from me, only suzerains and fighting phantoms can come in and out freely, said the King of the 10,000 Beasts to Lin Feng calmly. If you want to leave, you must become a suzerain or a fighting phantom. But those suzerains have reached the peak of perfection. You won't have the opportunity to reach the peak of perfection before 50 years, I think. And a fighting phantom. You're just an emperor. If you want to win against some of the strongest great imperial beasts, and become the strongest one of a territory, it will be extremely difficult as well. You'll have to break through to the Diqi layer first, said the king of the 10,000 beasts. A suzerain or a fighting phantom. He's even more terrifying than I thought Lin Feng. Maybe those who could go in and out freely could infiltrate the continent of the 9 clouds. How do I become a fighting phantom? Asked Lin Feng. I suggest you don't bring about your own destruction. First, focus on breaking through to the Diqi layer, and then you may have an opportunity, said the king of the 10,000 beasts. How do I become a fighting phantom? Lin Feng asked again. The king of the 10,000 beasts looked amused and smiled. You're in a world of heroes. If you want to become a fighting phantom, you have to make a public announcement and say you want to become a fighting phantom. Then, you'll have 7 days to rest, after which you'll fight against a terrifying amount of beasts. As long as they are great emperors, they can fight against you and try to kill you. After 3 months, if you're not dead, you'll become a fighting phantom. A public announcement. Lin Feng frowned. That was even more terrifying than the meeting of the continent of the 9 clouds. Can they join hands to fight against me? Asked Lin Feng. They cannot. But they can fight against you one after another as they wish, without waiting, replied the king of the 10,000 beasts. Lin Feng took a deep breath. He couldn't fight against groups, that was obvious. However, even one-on-ones, that was incredible. Lin Feng couldn't imagine what it would be like. Qinghai's rock, Hezi's Maharaga, such people were terrifying. They were geniuses. What about great imperial weapons? Asked Lin Feng. You can't use them, said the king of the 10,000 beasts, shaking his head. There have been only 100 and some fighting phantoms in history, less than 200. Only one appears every 1,000 years or so, and they were all great emperors. Now they've become my best assistants. They replace suzerains who die. That's dangerous, said Lin Feng, rather annoyed. Of course, when someone becomes a fighting phantom, they have lots of advantages. I even give them the army of a whole world, said the king of the 10,000 beasts coolly. Lin Feng's eyes glittered and he said, I'll go out and think. Study my 7 lives properly. When you reach the top of the Diqi layer, you can try, said the king of the 10,000 beasts calmly. He waved his hand, and Lin Feng appeared outside of the king of the 10,000 beasts' inner city. Lin Feng crossed the door, through which he had come in. Very quickly, he arrived back where he had started. He was wondering whether Bai Yu and the others had come out or not. They had probably experienced the king of the 10,000 beasts' lives as well. Fighting phantom. A public announcement, thought Lin Feng. He had no choice. It was the only solution to leave that place. He had to become strong first. He had no choice now. The meeting of the continent of the 9 clouds had shaken the whole continent of the 9 clouds. After that, things had calmed down. Many new geniuses had started springing up, like bamboo shoots after a spring rain. In hell, there was a young man called Emojung. He was insane. He had no enemy at the same cultivation level. He was a successor of the ancient demon clan, and one of the grandsons of the 10 Yama Quartz kings. He was also a member of the Hell Shrine. All his social statuses were dazzling. He went to the celestial country alone and killed many people. He wanted to go to the continent of the 9 clouds. At the same time, in the imperial court of the continent of the 9 clouds, some geniuses were rising. In the Snow Clan, 2 young monarchs, a beautiful woman and a handsome young man had appeared. It was said that they were mother and son. Chapter 2253. Fighting Phantom Protectors. Bai Yu and the others were back together in the Great Rock's palace. At that moment they were together. He's the only one who hasn't come back. How is it in town? Asked Bai Yu calmly. I experienced a life. What about you? Asked Dinua calmly. The others understood and nodded. A life, the life of a very strong sword cultivator, said Bai Yu, staring at them. Mine wasn't like that. It was the life of a peerless demon cultivator, said Qinghai's rock. Everybody was startled. The dark golden-pupiled king said. The king of the 10,000 beasts' lives were terrifying. He's been living for such a long time. I could study one of his lives for years and years. But why did my father die? Bai Yu pulled a long face. She was furious. Her father had come to this place. After coming out, he wanted to break through. What had happened? What difficulty had he faced? Old poisonous monster, what are you doing? Qinghai's rock asked Heezy's Maharaga. His eyes were closed. I'm going to break through to the next cultivation layer. I can feel it, said the old poisonous monster, smiling evilly and hissing. The others were surprised. He was actually a middle-aged man, much older than them. He had been famous for a long time, but he hadn't managed to break through. After experiencing a life, he was going to break through. We were 9 people initially, said the old poisonous monster suddenly. He looked evil. Qing Yi and Bai Yu's maid had come back, but Lin Feng hadn't. The memories of an entire life were precious. The old poisonous monster looked at Bai Yu's maid and Qing Yi slyly. Everybody knew what he wanted. Share the memories you obtained, said the old poisonous monster. The memories of those lives were priceless. Qing Yi was stupefied. He said, if everybody wants to share, I don't mind sharing. Yes, just share yours first with everyone, said the old poisonous monster. Qing Yi pulled a long face. That bastard wanted to force him, but it didn't look good. Those people all had the same thoughts. Everybody was staring at him. All right, said Qing Yi, his face stiff. All those people could easily kill him. He felt humiliated, but he had no choice. Qing Yi shared the memories of the life he had experienced with everybody else. However, it wasn't the same as when the king had absorbed their souls to make them experience the lives. It was a different sensation. It felt less real, but it was still very beneficial. At that moment the ox arrived. Even though he tried to walk lightly, he made the ground shake. Uncle Ox, Qinghai's rock greeted him. All right. The ox nodded and looked at everybody. You managed to come here, you have incredible fighting abilities. Now, you've had the experience to experience new lives. You will all become stronger. Do you want to go to the Bestial Memorial Pagoda to test your strength and see if you're eligible to become Fighting Phantom Protectors? What is the Bestial Memorial Pagoda, and what are Fighting Phantom Protectors? Asked Heezy's Maharaga. The Bestial Memorial Pagoda is a place you can enter and exit freely. You use a fake body to enter that place, and you can compete with all the other strong cultivators. That way no risk of dying. You can even disguise yourselves within. Nobody will know it's you. Regarding Fighting Phantom Protectors, you know what Fighting Phantoms are. Fighting Phantom Protectors protect Fighting Phantoms. All the ministers have to acknowledge you for you to become one. Where's the Bestial Memorial Pagoda? Asked Qinghai's rock. Every territory has an entrance to the Bestial Memorial Pagoda. Your father is in charge of this place. The entrance to the Bestial Memorial Pagoda is here, in the Great Rock Castle. Uncle Ox replied. Good. I wanted to see how strong the others here are, said Zishu's flood dragon, standing up. They followed the ox and headed to the Bestial Memorial Pagoda. At that moment, Lin Feng was coming back to that place. After asking around, he realized that this world was even stricter than the world of humans. Everything was strictly organized. Everything was logged in journals too. If Lin Feng was here, it meant he was strong enough to live here. Lin Feng was assigned a residence. The king of the 10,000 beasts was really a terrifying cultivator, but he was also an excellent manager. It also meant that he had a vision for the future. Lin Feng didn't go out for some time. He started meditating in seclusion. Even though the lives he had experienced weren't his, they were useful, and he could learn many things from them. He had seen many cultivators' spells, skills, and techniques in them. His clone was also studying in the Fortune Shrine. The Devamara Kulpa strength cleansed Lin Feng's body again. He didn't break through. Each wave of Devamara Kulpa strength was, as usual, stronger than the previous one. Each time the Devamara Kulpa strength cleansed Lin Feng's body, he used his Devamara body cleansing technique twice. That way his physical strength kept increasing. Even if he couldn't break through, he was already much stronger than many great emperors in terms of physical strength. After some time, Lin Feng stopped meditating in seclusion and came out. He walked out into the middle of all those palaces. Next to him was a beautiful woman, Lu Fei. At that moment, Lu Fei was smiling gently. It was the first time Lin Feng had taken her out of Shuiyu. Lin Feng, where are we? Asked Lu Fei. She was astonished. There were so many terrifyingly strong beasts everywhere. A powerful animal world called the King of the 10,000 Beasts territory. It's very well organized here. Better organized than the world of humans, replied Lin Feng. He didn't spend much time with her therefore. He wanted to have a walk with her. She wasn't weak either, and she was extremely bored in Shuiyu. After all, Lin Feng's world wasn't developed at all. These beasts are extremely strong. Are they all imperial beasts? Asked Lu Fei, firmly holding Lin Feng's hand. She felt nervous here. Yes, at least. They're really strong. And there are also many great imperial beasts, explained Lin Feng. Lu Fei didn't know what to say. She didn't even know how strong Lin Feng had become. However, Lin Feng felt guilty, because if she hadn't gotten married with him, she would have had a more peaceful life. He owed her. He rarely spent time with her, and rarely went to Shuiyu. Lu Fei was holding Lin Feng's arm tightly. They arrived on a beautiful and vast road. There were many vendors' booths there, selling all sorts of precious items. The King of the 10,000 Beasts world was well organized. But nevertheless, many beasts died regularly, including extremely strong ones, because others wanted to steal their items. How beautiful! Lu Fei saw a Taoist robe made of peacock feathers with 7 colors. The woman who was wearing it was extremely beautiful. She looked elegant and free of vulgarity. How is it? The woman asked a young man next to her. She kept pivoting to show him her robe, beaming happily. So beautiful, said the young man with a smile. He looked at the vendor and asked, how much? Level 3 Great Imperial Weapon, that'd be enough, said the vendor smiling. Level 3 Great Imperial Weapon, whispered Lu Fei, gaping slightly. The woman wearing the cape looked at Lu Fei in a proud and arrogant way. That woman was wondering what a weak cultivator like Lu Fei was doing here. Lin Feng walked forwards and looked at the vendor. Do you have the same Taoist robe made of feathers? I can pay a level 3 Great Imperial Weapon. The vendor smiled neutrally and shook his head without saying anything. Such clothes have to be tailor-made. Otherwise they'd be worthless. Who would want to wear the same clothes as other people? Besides, level 3 Great Imperial Weapon? Said the woman glancing at Lin Feng disdainfully. Not everybody could pay a level 3 Great Imperial Weapon for clothes. If you agree, I am willing to give you a level 4 Great Imperial Weapon, said Lin Feng. He knew Lu Fei liked it. He kept calm, talking gently, even if this woman was making fun of him. The woman was surprised, staring at Lin Feng, and said, look at yourself. Then she turned around, dragging the young man next to her, and left. The young man glanced at Lin Feng with a flat smile. He looked proud and arrogant too. Lin Feng, I'm sorry, said Lu Fei. She felt guilty. She felt like she had made a fuss about nothing. I'm sorry. So many years, I've been trying to solve as many things as possible, and I didn't take good care of you. I messed up, said Lin Feng, caressing Lu Fei's cheeks. He felt guilty. At that moment the vendor said, that's the 7 Feathers Prince. According to rumors, he has been selected by the Fighting Phantom Protectors to become one. If a Fighting Phantom emerges, he'll probably become a protector. He has a very high social status. Surprisingly, you wanted to obtain his item. The vendor shook his head. In his eyes, Lin Feng had overestimated himself. Chapter 2254. Bestial Memorial Pagoda. Lin Feng looked at the 2 people leaving in the distance and said, I've heard about fighting phantoms only. I've heard that one fighting phantom emerges every 1,000 years or even more. What do fighting phantom protectors do? What is their role? You haven't been here for very long. Even if there is no fighting phantom, we need protectors for our territories. Some people can be selected in advance. And then when a fighting phantom appears, some people can become fighting phantom protectors. The 7 Feathers Prince has already publicly announced his identity in the Bestial Memorial Pagoda. And he's had incredible results. Not many people can defeat him. Bestial Memorial Pagoda? Lin Feng looked surprised. Yes, the Bestial Memorial Pagoda is one of the most important places in the King of the 10,000 Beasts territory. Everybody can go there. And if they want, they can hide their real identity to fight against everyone else and see how strong they are. Every territory has an entrance to the Bestial Memorial Pagoda, said the vendor. Thank you for your time, said Lin Feng, smiling and nodding, before leaving with Lu Fei. Lin Feng enjoyed the feeling of her warm hand in his. He smiled and said, Fei Fei, do you want anything else? No. Taking a walk is enough, said Lu Fei. She had gradually gotten used to the environment here. Things became more natural for her. Lin Feng nodded, and they continued walking around. Sometimes he found some small things which he thought she'd like, and he bought them for her. The Bestial Memorial Pagoda's entrance was in the Great Rock Palace. Actually, the entrance was a gigantic place with many vaults. There were dazzling lights in the vaults, where many people were seated alone and motionless. Are those void entrances? Murmured Lin Feng. He walked forwards and arrived in front of a vault. He went under it and sat down in the light. He closed his eyes and suddenly, a terrifying strength drew him in. Lin Feng felt as light as a feather, as he ended up somewhere else. How strange, thought Lin Feng. He looked down at his body. His real body was probably outside, but the body made of consciousness he had in here didn't feel different at all. So many cloaks, armors and masks, thought Lin Feng, glancing around. Were those things there for them to hide their identity? Lin Feng put on a black cloak and a black mask. His body was suddenly surrounded by an illusion. How strange, murmured Lin Feng happily. His silhouette flickered, and he left that hall. After a short time, he met someone. That person looked strong. He was a great emperor. Even emperors dare come in here? That person was wearing a tiger mask and sounded icy. The Bestial Memorial Pagoda was divided into different floors. The first floor was for emperors. The second floor was for great emperors. The third floor was for celestial emperors. Lin Feng was on the second floor, the floor for great emperors. Celestial emperors couldn't go to the second or first floors, but the opposite was possible. Emperors could go to the second and third floors, but great emperors couldn't go to the first floor. That cultivator jumped ahead with a rumble of rising power. A massive strength surrounded Lin Feng and oppressed him. The cultivator roared, suddenly turning into a gigantic lion. The ground cracked under his paws. Lin Feng's soul was trembling. Piss off. A gigantic hand moved towards Lin Feng. The lion looked at him disdainfully. In his eyes, an emperor had no business here. A terrifying sound suddenly filled the air. It contained cursing strength and reverberated everywhere. The lion's intent started shaking. Lin Feng's fist was filled with terrifying demon lights. Rumbling sounds spread out, and the ground exploded under their feet as their energies met. The beast roared furiously. How dare an emperor come there? He wanted to crush Lin Feng's hand. Piss off, shouted the lion. The lion was a bit careless, but Lin Feng had gotten ready. He shouted, and cursing strength made the lion tremble. At the same time, he released sword strength, which shot towards his opponent's head. His consciousness broke apart, and he disappeared from there. When Lin Feng saw his opponent disappear, he didn't look satisfied. Even if his opponent was a great imperial beast, he wasn't as strong as Qinghai's rock and the others. He was at most as strong as Qingyi. He had also been careless, so Lin Feng had crushed him. This place is incredible. My consciousness is like my body in here. I wonder how the king of the 10,000 beasts made this place. It's good to practice and people don't die for real here, thought Lin Feng with a sigh. In a hall outside, the cultivator Lin Feng had defeated appeared, still wearing his tiger mask. Many people looked at him and laughed. Haha, he crushed you. It was strange, so strange, said that person in annoyance. I was too careless. But I will find him. He got ready to go back inside. You're acting recklessly, said all the beasts, laughing at him. Bai Yu and the others were also inside the Bestial Memorial Pagoda. Hezi's Maharaga was extremely strong. At that moment, he was devouring someone entirely. The person kept shrieking madly. Hezi's Maharaga was uncaring. Even if his opponent didn't really die, he liked doing that to them. When they came out, they had a really bad memory. In another place, the 7 Feathers Prince was wearing a feather robe with 7 colors. Even if he was wearing a mask, people knew who he was, and many people fled, not wanting to fight against him. Next to him was a mysterious silhouette, looking graceful and swift. But considering her silhouette, she was probably a banshee. Her eyes looked cunning and evil. Everybody is avoiding you. It mustn't be fun? The woman smiled. The Seven Feathers Prince replied, I'm behind you. You try. All right, the woman nodded. They were both hunting for prey. After a short time, the woman's eyes gleamed. She saw an emperor. Was he a human or a beast? After all, there were mostly beasts in there. But sometimes there were humans too. Good boy. An emperor on the second floor. What kind of place does he think the bestial memorial pagoda is? The woman giggled. She stalked forwards gracefully, like a snake in the water. Lin Feng saw that woman, and he also saw the Seven Feathers Prince behind her. He had already seen these two at the market. Coincidence? The Seven Feathers Prince has the potential to become a fighting phantom protector. I'll see how strong he is. It's a perfect opportunity. A silhouette moved gracefully, wearing a gigantic snake mask. Lin Feng and the others could clearly sense their evil qi, however. When people turned around, including Lin Feng, they sensed the evil energies even more clearly. That person was extremely dangerous. Lin Feng recognized those eyes and that qi. It was the old poisonous monster. Perfect, he wanted to see how strong he was. He would be able to see how strong all those cultivators were. But at that moment, the old poisonous monster and the Seven Feathers Prince weren't interested in Lin Feng at all. The banshee had dark green eyes and was staring at Lin Feng. It was like she was trying to bewitch him. Chapter 2255. Continuous battles. Lin Feng was determined, wise, and persistent. Even if the woman was a great emperor, it was not effective against him. Hee. A giggle resonated in Lin Feng's brain. He saw many silhouettes of dancing women, slim and beautiful. They were getting closer and closer to him. How not to have lusty thoughts when seeing such beautiful women? Lin Feng's heart sped up. The illusion looked so real. Lin Feng ground his teeth. His eyes became pitch black. He broke the illusion and came back to his senses. However, a beautiful woman was still walking towards him. Was he unable to stop the illusion? Piss off, said Lin Feng. He raised his fist and bombarded the illusion. It broke apart. Lin Feng grunted coldly. That illusion was powerful and looked so real. A gentle breeze brushed against him. Lin Feng felt unsafe. Illusionary beautiful women appeared all around him again, slowly taking off their clothes, their snowy white skin appearing. They looked extremely arousing. What an incredible temptation, Dao, thought Lin Feng. Suddenly, the women turned into snakes and opened their mouths wide open, lunging towards him. Lin Feng was standing in the middle of all the snakes. He had the impression he was going to be devoured alive and sleep forever. Wisdom Kings appeared in Lin Feng's brain. How could he sink into temptation with Wisdom Kings? His eyes shone darkly. He released sword energies and sliced apart the snakes. At the same time, he moved towards one of them. The snake woman's face stiffened. How could he recognize her real body? Lin Feng could see through the illusion. His eyes were filled with death stamps. Dao's strength surged out, and the woman's face changed drastically. Lin Feng broke the illusion and attacked using death intent. He was too close to her. She couldn't block him. A strong wind started blowing. The woman turned around and looked to the Seven Feathers Prince. His face stiffened, and he suddenly moved forwards and shouted explosively, "Stop!" However, it was useless. Lin Feng smashed her with his fist. She screamed loudly as she was hurled back into the main hall and exploded. The woman suddenly opened her eyes. She was back under her vault. Her chest kept heaving for breath. Her face was deathly pale. "Bastard, I will kill you," shouted the woman furiously. She went back into the bestial memorial pagoda, to the place where Lin Feng had crushed her. The Seven Feathers Prince was staring at Lin Feng, his qi released. Lin Feng dared attack women like that? And he was a mere emperor. "You want to bring about your own destruction," said the Seven Feathers Prince coldly. Razored wings suddenly appeared in his hands and shot towards Lin Feng. In reply, a terrifying river appeared and surrounded Lin Feng. Lin Feng suddenly rose up into the air. Some feathers fell from the sky. Black lights appeared and fissures appeared in the air. The Seven Feathers Prince, are all those feathers special spells? Wondered Lin Feng. Very quickly, a third feather cut towards Lin Feng from behind. Claws suddenly appeared and lunged towards him. Lin Feng didn't flinch. He raised his empowered fist and smashed the claws. As he destroyed them, a gigantic hawk swooped towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng released sword intent. The 7 feathers prince threw his last feather, and Lin Feng had the sensation dark assassin's claws were reaching for him. It wasn't only a physical attack, it was also a soul attack. Lin Feng had to be extremely cautious. When Lin Feng saw that, he released as much sword intent as he could, and his 9 ancient words started floating around him. Terrifying lights filled the air. A bell sounded off as the energies moved towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng started punching out repeatedly. Everything in front of him seemed to explode. The 7 feathers prince threw himself at Lin Feng. He raised his hands, the atmosphere around him crackled. Lin Feng's physical strength was incredible, but against such an attack, he had the impression he was going to be cut apart. It was extremely dangerous. Die! Shouted the 7 feathers prince furiously. His 7 wings descended from the sky, like 7 sharp swords. Lin Feng grunted. His face was a bit pale. What a powerful attack. With such attacks, he could even destroy great emperors. Lin Feng shouted out, and his 9 words resonated with the cosmos. He charged at the 7 feathers prince. He's not dying, after all this? The 7 feathers prince hadn't thought that Lin Feng wouldn't die. He was just an emperor. The prince looked angry. He raised his hands and more claws shot towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng ignored the attacks, moving towards the prince. He looked like a brutal and violent beast. He cast his celestial stage deployment spell, adding in a soundwave deployment spell, which oppressed the prince. The atmosphere kept trembling. The 7 feathers prince's attack exploded, but he continued punching out in Lin Feng's direction. At the same time, deployment lights made of empty space cosmic energies appeared around him. Kill! Shouted the 7 feathers prince, releasing his 7 wings again. They turned into several beasts which looked like sharp swords. Fissures appeared in the air around them. Lin Feng disappeared, and reappeared higher up in the air. Many black holes appeared in the air, and descended towards the 7 feathers prince. Die, die! The 7 feathers prince felt oppressed. Lin Feng was using his terrifying Nihility death sword. The atmosphere around him was filled with death strength. His silhouette flickered as he flapped his wings. Lin Feng disappeared and reappeared again, blocking him. He shouted furiously, and released more strength which penetrated into the prince's body. He raised his fists too and punched out in the prince's direction. It contained a terrifying amount of strength and cosmic energies. The 7 feathers prince's face stiffened. Maximum level death Dao. He could kill great emperors of the top of the Di-Chi layer with such attacks. He didn't want to fight anymore. But Lin Feng prevented him from leaving, so he could only block the attacks. The 7 feathers prince didn't want to fight anymore, and wanted to escape from a cultivator of the Huangqi layer. Lin Feng watched him as he fled. Lin Feng didn't chase him. He could defeat him, but he couldn't kill him easily. When Heezi's Maharaga saw the 7 feathers prince escape, he stared at Lin Feng. That guy's attacks were scary. But also, that guy's style looked like the style of the guy who had come with them, who was also an emperor. When Lin Feng was with them, he hadn't thought Lin Feng looked that strong. Now this guy in front of him also controlled death strength. But it couldn't be the same. It had to be a coincidence. But an emperor with such incredible fighting abilities, that was surprising. Haha, what a strong guy, said Heezi's Maharaga, spitting out poison. Lin Feng turned to stare at him. He felt like battling. Death strength surrounded him like poison did the Maharaga. I have someone to fight against, it seems, said Heezi's Maharaga, spitting out more poison. His poison surrounded Lin Feng. That poison was thick, it wasn't too liquid. Lin Feng suddenly jumped forwards. However, poison stuck to his clothes, and it penetrated into his organs. It contained a toxin which slowed Lin Feng down. Poison also emerged from the Maharaga's eyes. He controlled Dao power. This kind of fighter could paralyze enemies in battles. It could stop someone's blood, even if they had a powerful heart. Vital organs could stop functioning because of the poison too. It could even paralyze someone's soul. Lin Feng's strong blood was boiling. He kept releasing life energy into it. At the same time, he oppressed the strength which was flowing in his body. He wanted to purge the poison. At the same time, he also released death strength, which also started flowing through his opponent's body. The Maharaja opened his mouth wide and spat out a thick and yellowish poison. Lin Feng couldn't dodge. The poison was definitely going to reach him, so Lin Feng had no choice. He jumped forwards and got closer to the Maharaja. However, the old poisonous monster didn't care. He looked at Lin Feng and reopened his mouth widely. His mouth was now dozens of meters wide. He wanted to devour Lin Feng alive. His poison was extremely powerful, and if he managed to devour Lin Feng, the poison would dissolve his body. That's how he had become so big. He had devoured many people in his life. Chapter 2256. God of Hell's name. Lin Feng was staring at his opponent. The Maharaja's gigantic teeth were yellowish and green. Poison stuck to his palate, gums, and teeth. Lin Feng found the smell horrible. On top of that, even if the Maharaja didn't devour him entirely and dissolved him with poison, he could also bite him. It would be enough to kill him. Lin Feng released dazzling Holy Spirit swords and attacked his opponent's teeth. His silhouette flickered. The old poisonous monster snapped his mouth shut. Lin Feng heard some snorting sounds as green poison splashed. The old poisonous monster looked at Lin Feng, pulling a long face. The Maharaja started transforming, growing to thousands of meters long. He looked as mighty as a dragon. His chi was evil and ice-cold. The air darkened around them. Lin Feng looked at the gigantic Maharaja, acknowledging his strength. His poison chi was deadly. No wonder so many people feared him. Back in the 8 great imperial animal cities, all the great emperors were scared of him. Lin Feng summoned thousands of holy spirits. Some of them turned into sky-absorbing holy spirits, some others into death holy spirits, some others into 9 netherworlds holy spirits, some of them into wisdom king holy spirits. Holy spirits appeared everywhere. Lin Feng's holy spirits were much more powerful than in the past. Even though he could summon great holy spirits now, his holy spirits were still deadly. The gigantic Maharaja spat out poison again and moved towards Lin Feng. The Maharaja was gigantic, but he was also very fast. He arrived in front of Lin Feng, trying to constrict him. Die! An incredible amount of holy spirits moved towards him. An ancient chi filled the air around them. 9 words floated around Lin Feng. He condensed the energies of the 10,000 things of creation, and they surrounded the Maharaja. Lin Feng also released some terrifying sword chi. The Maharaja was resistant. It wasn't easy to defeat him. Lin Feng released sky-absorbing strength and condensed cosmic energies. He raised his fist and condensed cosmic energies in his fist as well. Terrifying black lightning fire appeared in his fist, and it also contained sword strength. Deployment lights started intertwining in front of him. He was staring at the Maharaja. The Maharaja roared defiantly, facing a terrifying attack. Lin Feng disappeared, reappearing in front of the Maharaja. The old poisonous monster roared furiously. When he saw that Lin Feng dared come closer, he opened his mouth widely again, trying to bite Lin Feng with his poisoned teeth. However, Lin Feng was too fast and went down his throat. It smelled horrible. There was poison everywhere. However, Lin Feng was so fast, the Maharaja had no time to dissolve Lin Feng's body. The Maharaja's face stiffened. Lin Feng kept attacking from inside his body. Killing energies kept exploding out, and his body was blasted open from within. Lin Feng reappeared, soaked in terrifying poison. Lin Feng released life strength to counter it, but still, it felt extremely unpleasant. Forget it. I'm out too, said Lin Feng. After a short time he returned to his body. When he reappeared there, the old poisonous monster was shouting and roaring in a thundering rage. He wasn't far from Lin Feng. Who? Shouted the Maharaja furiously. An emperor had crushed him and hurled him out of the fighting area. An emperor? How could that emperor be so strong? How had he managed to pierce through his body from the inside? His body was filled with poison. Old poisonous monster, what are you shouting for? Were you killed inside? Asked Qinghai's rock coldly. The old poisonous monster stared at Qinghai's rock. He just grunted coldly. The bestial memorial pagoda is really mysterious. It can condense people's consciousness inside. And yet people have the impression everything is real. Did you get killed, old poisonous monster? Asked Qinghai's rock. The old poisonous monster shouted furiously. If you want to try, go inside and let's agree on a place to fight. Is that so? You were defeated, and now you want to release your anger on me? But with your speed, can you even reach me? Queried Qinghai's rock coldly. Come. Let's go to Celestial Protection City and fight in the sky above. All right, said the old poisonous monster coldly. Many people looked excited. They wanted to watch battles. Lin Feng didn't go to watch them though. He just left the place. He continued going to the Bestial Memorial Pagoda regularly. Very quickly, a certain god of hell became very famous. Many who had been defeated by Lin Feng called him that, or death god. Many people couldn't stand his death strength. Some people said that he had never lost. The rumors also said that the Seven Feathers Prince had been defeated by the god of hell, that he had killed him in the pagoda back then. His reputation was increasing each day. Black robe, black mask. Everywhere he went people died. Many people started paying attention to him. Lin Feng re-entered the Bestial Memorial Pagoda. He was at the top of a castle, his black cloak fluttering in the wind. He wanted to try attacks he had created and see if how strong he had become. He was waiting for the next time he was cleansed by Devamara Kulpa strength. He had plans. In the distance people saw him, but they didn't get close. Baiyu was in the crowd. Lin Feng could recognize her, as she was wearing white clothes and had a great figure. And he could also recognize her chi. God of hell. Back then, he defeated the old poisonous monster. His death chi is terrifying. Is he really only a cultivator of the top of the Huang Qi layer? Thought Baiyu. His death strength had reached perfection, and he could defeat great emperors at the top of the Di Qi layer. It was incredible. She couldn't believe that a cultivator of the top of the Huang Qi layer could defeat someone like the old poisonous monster. She had met some incredible emperors in her life, but they had never been so terrifying. The old poisonous monster and the others could easily kill those people. At that moment, the god of hell's body became illusionary, and he disappeared. He left the Bestial Memorial Pagoda. Baiyu closed her eyes and left as well. In the pagoda, a moment before, Baiyu had seen that the god of hell had killed a few people. She still remembered the battles. She left the palace, but looked absent-minded and preoccupied. Miss Bai, said someone at that moment. Baiyu turned around and saw Lin Feng. What are you doing here? Where did you go after leaving the city? Asked Baiyu. I came back a while ago. I've seen you a few times. But in the pagoda, you don't have time to talk to me, said Lin Feng, smiling thinly. The pagoda was a nice place for another reason, as people could practice without worrying about dying or lasting harm. After that, Lin Feng left alone. After Lin Feng left, someone came up to Baiyu. Why didn't you keep him here? Baiyu turned around and looked at Heezi's Maharaga. Why would I? He received the memories of a life too. Lives are precious treasures. I just need one more life and I'll break through. Even if you don't want the memories, I want them, said the old poisonous monster, evilly staring after Lin Feng. After he left, he brought out Qiuyu Xian. After breaking her Dao, Qiuyu Xian had spent some time in his spirit's world. She had given up Dao. Now, she was happy as long as she was at Lin Feng's side. Qiuyu Xian was much calmer than Lu Fei. She had gone through much more in life, and was less excitable. They were on a bridge and looking at the sun. It was beautiful. Is that sun fake? It's so beautiful though, murmured Qiuyu Xian with a smile. Who cares? Life is like a dream anyway. We don't need everything to be real to enjoy ourselves, replied Lin Feng lazily. That guy knows how to talk to women, interrupted a voice coldly. Lin Feng turned around and saw the Seven Feathers Prince and that woman. He's stronger than you though, said that woman. When she saw how beautiful Qiuyu Xian was, she smiled at the Seven Feathers Prince. You're bewitching enough, said the Seven Feathers Prince indifferently. He glanced at Lin Feng and the others around. The pair passed next to Lin Feng and Qiuyu Xian, disdaining them. Lin Feng likewise ignored them. His eyes were pitch black. He smiled broadly and dark clouds condensed in the sky above them. Go, Lin Feng said to Qiuyu Xian, and their silhouettes flickered, vanishing into the wind. The Seven Feathers Prince and the woman who weren't that far away suddenly turned around and frowned. Lin Feng and the woman had suddenly disappeared. Chapter 2257. The One Who Wants to Become a Fighting Phantom. Time passed. In each territory of the King of the 10,000 Beasts world, there was a gigantic martial arts stage. Above the martial arts stage, there was always a gigantic mirror. Those mirrors were called 10,000 Beasts mirrors, and they could illuminate the whole territory. In the Great Rock territory, there were many people going to that place, looking solemn and respectful. No battle had occurred on the martial arts stage for a very long time. Only the strongest beasts fought on those martial arts stages. Baiyu Qinghai's Rock, Heezy's Maharaga, and the others were there too. Minister Rock had made them become fighting phantom protectors because they were extremely strong. However, they would need a very long time before becoming fighting phantoms. However, they were tough opponents, and there were many other geniuses in every territory. Unfortunately, I will brush past that opportunity, said the old poisonous monster, staring at the mirror. Icy lights appeared in his eyes. Dinua dark golden-pupiled king, Zishu's flood dragon, do you want to try? They all remained silent. They were self-confident, but they knew they weren't strong enough for that. Apart from them, many people around were also staring at the mirror. They saw someone else arrive, someone they knew. It's him. Baiyu looked stupefied. Heezy's Maharaga looked at that person greedily. He hadn't forgotten about the memories. Little boy, stop, said the old poisonous monster when he saw Lin Feng. Lin Feng looked over at them, seeing Baiyu and the others. He nodded at them. Last time, you also experienced a life, right? The old poisonous monster asked Lin Feng. Lin Feng looked at him calmly and nodded. Since it's that way, share the memories with us, said the old poisonous monster calmly, as if he had said something ordinary. Lin Feng looked at him for a few seconds, but then ignored him. He glanced at the others. They remained silent, just looking at him as if they agreed with the old poisonous monster. Lin Feng smiled thinly and continued walking on. The old poisonous monster looked surprised. That boy dared ignore them? I told you to stop, said the old poisonous monster coldly. Lin Feng continued ignoring him though, and kept walking forwards. The old poisonous monster pulled a long face. There's something wrong. Where is he going? Asked Baiyu. She was stunned. Lin Feng continued walking towards the martial arts stage. He was going under the 10,000 Beasts mirror. Impossible. He wants to die, thought Baiyu. She couldn't believe it. Lin Feng was definitely going to stop. At that moment, Qinghai's Rock also realized something was wrong. Lin Feng went under the mirror. Was he insane? They all frowned. Lin Feng stopped at the foot of the martial arts stage, and they all took a deep breath. As expected, he wasn't insane. How could they even think he wanted to get onto the battle stage? And then, Lin Feng rose up into the air, and then landed on the martial arts stage. Baiyu was astonished. People around were astonished. The 10,000 Beasts mirror illuminated Lin Feng. You're insane, Baiyu shouted at Lin Feng. Let him die, said Heezy's Maharaga smiling coldly. Lin Feng was acting recklessly. However, Lin Feng didn't care about what they were saying. He raised his head and looked at the mirror. He said calmly, I announce I'd like to become a fighting phantom. When he said that, the mirror illuminated the whole territory. Dazzling lights flashed everywhere. Everywhere in that world, people raised their heads and saw a silhouette on a martial arts stage. He was publicly proclaiming, I announce I'd like to become a fighting phantom. The Seven Feathers Prince raised his head. The woman next to him raised her head. Their faces stiffened. The fool they had met at the market. They frowned. He was making a public announcement. He wants to die, said the Seven Feathers Prince coldly. Lin Feng jumped off the stage. He was illuminated by lights. They were following him. It wasn't a secret anymore. Everybody knew what he intended now. 7 days from now, he would welcome anyone, and he would fight. It would be a massacre. 7 days from now, he would fight against the world. He would then need to resist them for 3 months. If he succeeded, he'd become a fighting phantom. Lin Feng left the martial arts stage. Baiyu's mouth was wide open as she stared at Lin Feng. She didn't recognize him anymore. It was as if she had met him for the first time at that moment. Fighting phantom? Easy's Maharaga smiled coldly. He spat glossy green poison onto the ground. Qinghai's rock opened his wings, streaked across the sky and landed in front of Lin Feng. However, Lin Feng ignored him and continued walking calmly. Qinghai's rock was flying above Lin Feng. It was as if he could attack any time. "Shouldn't you transmit your memories to me before I kill you?" said Heezy's Maharaga, who was following too. To him, Lin Feng was already dead. Anywhere Lin Feng would go, the mirror would follow him. Lin Feng went back to his residence and closed his eyes, calmly waiting. During those 7 days, many people came to find him. This guy wanted to become a fighting phantom? Finally, 7 days passed and a gong clanged loudly. The palace in which Lin Feng was living was broken down by many beasts. They had been waiting for this day impatiently. Finally, it was time. A silhouette slowly rose up in the air. He was wearing a black robe. His eyes were pitch black. He looked cold and grim. Many people were astonished. That guy's costume was too familiar. God of Hell. Baiyu looked at Lin Feng, her face stiff, and said, "He's the God of Hell." Heezy's Maharaga's face was hilarious. Back then, he had been crushed by the God of Hell. The Seven Feathers Prince and the Banshee raised their heads and saw a black cloak fluttering in the wind. "It's him." The Banshee's face turned deathly pale. The Seven Feathers Prince pulled a long face. He had escaped back then when he was fighting against Lin Feng. "Isn't he the one you saw last time? Why are you surprised?" The street vendor asked the Seven Feathers Prince. He had recognized Lin Feng. Why was the Seven Feathers Prince surprised? "He's the God of Hell. The Bestial Memorial Pagoda's God of Hell," said someone next to them. The vendor's face was funny. He looked at the Seven Feathers Prince's face. So, the rumors were true. The street vendor remembered what he had said to Lin Feng back then, and laughed at himself mockingly. A fighting phantom protector, so what? Lin Feng wanted to become a fighting phantom. He had made a public announcement. A beast moved towards Lin Feng lightning quick. Lin Feng wanted to become a fighting phantom? He could dream on. That beast looked as sharp as a sword. However, Lin Feng raised his hand and grabbed the beast's claws. Then, he raised his other fist. It was sharper than that beast's claws. A terrifyingly sharp demon fist smashed into the beast. The beast gave a horrible shriek and exploded. Blood splashed everywhere. Lin Feng stood there. He looked apathetic, like a god of hell. From that moment on, anyone could kill him, and he could kill anyone. The first person who attacked him died and brutally and atrociously, and was a great imperial beast. Everybody in that world had seen that clearly. The Bestial Memorial Pagoda's God of Hell was terrifyingly strong. If anyone wanted to kill him, they had to get ready to die first. As expected, after the first one died, many people who had gotten ready to attack didn't attack in the end. They were shaking and stunned. People who wanted to become fighting phantoms were extremely strong. He had crushed the first great imperial beast in one punch. Chapter 2258. Death God Lin Feng stood there and waited. Everybody could see him clearly in the whole King of the 10,000 Beasts world. He wanted to become a fighting phantom, so he was in everybody's field of vision. It was a cruel challenge, and he had to pass it. Many people had tried to become fighting phantoms in the past, and some of them had been crushed badly. However, that young man in black clothes was the first one ever who wanted to attempt becoming a fighting phantom with the strength of the Huangqi layer. It astonished everyone. The air began to hum. Many beasts moved towards Lin Feng. They all wanted to crush Lin Feng's soul. However, Lin Feng remained there motionless. He steadfastly stood his ground. A strong wind started blowing. A gigantic creature descended from the sky and moved towards Lin Feng. It wanted to peck at Lin Feng. Lin Feng released death stamps. A pitch-black beam of light emerged and dashed to the skies. Lin Feng's eyes were dazzling and filled with death strength. He shouted furiously, "Die!" Death Chi turned into a beam of light and shot towards the beast as Death Chi surrounded it. Its life was being corroded, giving it the impression it could die anytime. Lin Feng's cosmic energies had become much stronger. and they became stronger and stronger each day. His death cosmic energies were deadly, and coupled with Tao terrifying. Beams of light kept emerging from Lin Feng's eyes. He kept punching out using ancient holy punches. The air thundered, and the gigantic beast exploded. It started raining blood again. Blood splashed at Lin Feng's face. His death strength dispersed as another great imperial beast's corpse fell from the sky. Even the beasts who had gotten ready to attack Lin Feng were surrounded by death strength. They were staring at Lin Feng coldly. He was truly intimidating. They weren't sure they could defeat him. How strong? Bai Yu looked at Lin Feng, found herself shaking. Lin Feng had come here with them. Back then, he was calm and discreet. His qi wasn't too powerful. She had never thought he could be so strong. How could he be the god of hell, a death god? Each time he attacked, he killed. The old poisonous monster was also staring at Lin Feng. Back in the bestial memorial pagoda, he had lost against him. Now, he had the impression that Lin Feng had become even stronger. At that moment they all looked pensive. Lin Feng moved, and each time he moved, he turned into a beam of light. His wind and empty space cosmic energies were terrifying. He also had wings. Each time he took a step, he could travel incredible distances. Lin Feng's attacks were dazzling and magnificent. He used the most aggressive attacks he could when he punched. He condensed demon culpa lights in his fist, and punched a great imperial beast. This last time when he had been cleansed by Devamara culpa strength, he had used his Devamara body cleansing technique thrice. His physical strength was terrifying. With Lin Feng's physical strength, nobody could compete with him anymore. Beasts had a greater physical strength than humans, and their physical attacks were often formidable. However, when Lin Feng threw himself at a great imperial beast, he turned into a beam of light and pierced through his body. Those watching were trembling when they saw such attacks. People heard a melody start up, and Lin Feng's demon strength became even stronger. The source of the 9 netherworlds appeared all around him. Demon qi filled the air and spread far away. Everybody heard the demonic melody. Oh no! The 9 netherworlds demonic song can influence people's intent and turn them into demon puppets. Lin Feng pointed at a person. The 9 netherworlds lights penetrated into his body. He turned black, and his intent shook violently. His eyes turned pitch black and glittered. He roared furiously, before running away in a frenzy. Lin Feng was standing before the source of the 9 netherworlds. He said indifferently, "Who wants to kill me?" He sounded calm and steeled, totally self-confident. His physical strength, soul, and intent were incredible, and he had experienced the king's lives. He had become stronger, and even more determined. When he used his 9 netherworlds demonic song, his demon type's attacks were even more powerful and effective. Many beasts had the impression they were falling asleep. The demon energies didn't just corrode their lives, it also made them tired. "I saw something, a dream, the king of the 10,000 beasts' life," mumbled a beast. He started dreaming. He could see the beast king's life. "It's the king of the 10,000 beasts. It's one of his lives. He wants me to understand something," whispered another beast. Some beasts were determined and struggled. They knew it was a dream. Lin Feng had created dreams for them, and put the dream energies into the demon strength. People were falling asleep without paying attention. Many strong cultivators far away raised their heads and said, "Interesting, I need to go this time." Many extremely strong beasts hadn't come, but now they had seen how strong Lin Feng was, so they were getting ready to go and fight against Lin Feng. They were definitely going to kill him before he had time to become a fighting phantom. They wanted to show Lin Feng that to become a fighting phantom, he had to be ready to risk his life, and maybe even die. But only the strongest beasts thought that way. The others were just astonished. Lin Feng was just too strong. Killing him would be too difficult. Weaker beasts were thinking that if Lin Feng got badly injured, they'd finish him. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the opportunity to kill him. The 7 Feathers Prince was shaking in astonishment. He had lost against Lin Feng once, and he wouldn't have an opportunity this time either. "I've heard that the god of hell defeated the 7 Feathers Prince in the bestial memorial pagoda, and the 7 Feathers Prince wants to become a fighting phantom protector. The god of hell is so strong that he could beat a fighting phantom protector. If the god of hell becomes a fighting phantom, then the Seven Feathers Prince will be his protector for millions of years. Some people who didn't know the Seven Feathers Prince said that. The Seven Feathers Prince heard that. He was furious, because his woman was next to him. Her beautiful eyes were gleaming. She remembered what she had told Lin Feng back then. Look at yourself, she felt ridiculous. Lin Feng had just ignored her, because he didn't feel like talking to people like her. In the sky, the mirror was still displaying everything. The great imperial beasts who attacked were getting stronger and stronger. However, when they attacked, the 9 netherworld's strength kept piercing through their bodies, and death stamps assaulted them. In a short time, a few more corpses appeared on the ground. Lin Feng killed all his opponents mercilessly. He had no choice. Only strength mattered here. Old poisonous monster, don't you want his memories? Go and try, said Baiyu to the Maharaja. The old poisonous monster's face stiffened. That guy was the god of hell. He had already lost against him. He wanted to fight again, but in the bestial memorial pagoda, not outside, because he could die for real outside. Lin Feng had become much stronger. He was dangerous. Don't you want to try? The old poisonous monster asked Baiyu. Baiyu smiled indifferently. Old poisonous monster, if you don't dare attack, in 3 months, if he's still alive, you can become his fighting phantom protector, if he wants to recruit you. When the old poisonous monster heard that, his face stiffened. Becoming that guy's protector? Phew, he took a deep breath, looking desperate. He slowly rose up in the air. Baiyu's beautiful eyes twinkled when she saw that. Was he going to attack? What do you have to say about what we talked about? The old poisonous monster said to Lin Feng calmly. What? Replied Lin Feng coldly. He looked like a death god. I am about to attack you. If you lose, I won't kill you, just transmit me the memories. If I lose, I'll transmit you the memories, said the old poisonous monster calmly. Lin Feng smiled coldly. You're afraid to die. The old poisonous monster's face stiffened in tight anger. I am about to become a Tiandi level beast, how could I fear you? So just attack then, replied Lin Feng detachedly. The Maharaja's face stiffened into a grimace. He had reached a point of no return. If I lose, I am willing to become your protector, proposed the old poisonous monster. However, on the inside, he was thinking he was going to do his best to kill Lin Feng. If he lost, he'd find a way to escape. Lin Feng understood perfectly. He just nodded coldly. All right, I will recruit you then. Chapter 2259. Candidate. When the Maharaja heard that, he was furious. Everybody feared him in the great imperial city. Lin Feng was saying he was going to recruit him? How insolent. Poisonous qi filled the air. Many people quickly retreated. Very quickly, the poison surrounded both fighters. The air began to hum thickly. The crowd saw a terrifying gigantic Maharaja taking his true form. The gigantic Maharaja threw himself at Lin Feng. He opened his mouth and spat out poison unceasingly. When the poison appeared around Lin Feng, he stopped opening his mouth. The previous time, he had made that mistake and Lin Feng had defeated him that way. Lin Feng was too fast. He wanted to use physical strength or spells to defy him. Dong! 9 words appeared around Lin Feng. The earth and the sky trembled. An incredible quantity of death qi surrounded the Maharaja. The poison corroded his body, and his death qi corroded the Maharaja's body. Lin Feng then charged the old poisonous monster. He was a tiny little cultivator, and his enemy was a gigantic Maharaja. Everybody had the impression the Maharaja had the advantage because of that. The Maharaja spat out more poison at Lin Feng. That poison was thick, and there was enough for Lin Feng to drown in it. Lin Feng condensed dark demon lightning, which streaked across the sky in flickers of energy. The poison instantly disappeared, turned to powder. Lin Feng attacked the Maharaja. Millions of death stamps appeared and rained down. The Maharaja's heart was pounding, but his Dao intent was corroding Lin Feng's body too. His poison intent was fearsome. Time passed. The 2 fighters drew closer and closer. The battle was explosive. The Maharaja's face looked ferocious. His gigantic eyes were filled with green lights. He desperately wanted to kill Lin Feng. Roar! The Maharaja shouted furiously. A terrifying poison pellet moved towards Lin Feng. The poison chi was deadly. However, Lin Feng countered with an incredible amount of strength, which turned into sword energies and cut apart everything around him. The sword energies descended from the sky and cut the poison pellet in two. Lin Feng then threw himself at the Maharaja, aiming at his head. The Maharaja threw himself at Lin Feng as well, trying to constrict Lin Feng. An ancient chi filled the air. Lin Feng completely turned into a death sword and shot himself at the Maharaja. The Maharaja lowered his head, not daring to let Lin Feng attack him. However, Lin Feng still aimed at his head. Of course, Lin Feng was just a gigantic death sword at that moment. The Maharaja constricted the sword, sensing the terrifying sharp chi. The sword energy gradually cut into his head, and death strength penetrated into his body. His gigantic body was trembling. He kept screaming. He wanted to crush Lin Feng, but Lin Feng was too strong. His face began to distort. The gigantic Maharaja was trembling, which made the crowd tremble as well. The old poisonous monster wanted to constrict Lin Feng, not a sword. "I lost," shouted the old poisonous monster. He let go of Lin Feng. The crowd saw a third of the sword penetrate into the old poisonous monster's body. It was astonishing. The Maharaja turned black. The sword emitted whistling sounds before coming out of the Maharaja's body. Lin Feng became himself again. He was staring at the Maharaja, who was breathing loudly. Lin Feng said coldly, "I'll recruit you as a protector." The Maharaja was shaking. He raised his head and asked, "Are you really only a cultivator of the Huang Qi layer?" "Yes, for some reason. I can't break through to the Di Qi layer," said Lin Feng calmly. "Of course, that's probably only temporary. If I had broken through to the Di Qi layer, I would have been able to kill you in the blink of an eye." When the crowd heard Lin Feng, they shuddered with fear. How arrogant! However, they had to admit that with the strength of the Huang Qi layer, Lin Feng was already terrifying. If he became a great emperor, he would be impossibly strong. The Maharaja spat out chi, staring at Lin Feng and said, "All right, if you become a fighting phantom, I'll become your protector. Of course, if you die, I won't be able to." "Don't worry," replied Lin Feng indifferently, glancing at the crowd. "If nobody attacks me, I'm going." Lin Feng started walking. All the beasts were stunned and wavered as they watched him go. After a short time, Lin Feng arrived in a mountain range. Life and death lights glittered around him. Sky-absorbing life and death strength filled the air. He summoned the strength of the 10,000 things of creation, condensed them, and cast a deployment spell. It contained a terrifying amount of death strength. All the beasts were scared. Nobody dared provoke him anymore. Even though beasts didn't like humans, they had to admit that this human was terrifying. His understanding of cultivation was incredible. He didn't just have incredible fighting abilities, he was a genius. Now that he had cast a deployment spell, killing him was almost impossible. However, some beasts didn't fear him. A terrifying rhinoceros wearing armor charged at Lin Feng. The air kept trembling. The deployment spell was shaking fiercely and seemed to be on the verge of collapse. Gigantic pieces of stones exploded, rose up in the air, and then fell down from the sky towards the deployment spell. The rhinoceros was wrecking the mountain range. The gigantic rhinoceros galloped, craters appearing under him. Pieces of mountains continued flying towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng closed his eyes and raised his fists. He used his ancient holy fists, and didn't even open his eyes. When the rhinoceros arrived near Lin Feng, he roared out. The deployment spell became dazzling and deployment spell energy filled the air. At the same time, Lin Feng released Death Dao and Death Stamps, which smashed down on the rhinoceros. The great imperial rhinoceros collapsed and fell from the sky. His Death Dao has reached the maximum level. "How explosive!" murmured all the beasts. Even celestial emperors didn't understand Dao strength that well. Many people only reached the last level at when they became saint emperors. But even then, they didn't reach the top of the maximum level. But Lin Feng's Death Dao had reached the top. He could crush great imperial beasts in the blink of an eye. If we continue with one-on-ones, nobody in the King of the 10,000 Beasts territory can compete with him. Only a group can defeat him. The king of the 10,000 beasts territory hasn't seen such a genius in such a long time, commented many people staring at the mirror. They looked at Lin Feng with great respect. People admired strong cultivators. The king of the 10,000 beasts wanted to show everyone in his world what the fighting phantoms had in common. So he wanted everyone to be able to look at them. Strong cultivators from all territories came. More and more corpses appeared at the foot of the deployment spell. All of them were incredible great imperial beasts. But it didn't matter, because a fighting phantom was emerging. If Lin Feng wanted to become a fighting phantom, he had to kill a countless number of great imperial beasts. It was inevitable. Gradually time passed. There were more and more corpses. The strong cultivators of the king of the 10,000 beasts world didn't feel like fighting anymore. They slowly looked at Lin Feng respectfully. Bai Yu and the others were still watching. Bai Yu said calmly, "One more week, and he'll become a fighting phantom. I never thought this guy who came in here with us would become a fighting phantom. If he hadn't used a deployment spell, I would have been able to defeat him. But his deployment spell contains a terrifying death strength. I can't do much against him," murmured the dark golden-pupiled king. "If he becomes a fighting phantom, all the ministers will select protectors for him. Will you become protectors for him?" Bai Yu calmly asked the others. Fighting Phantom Protector? That was an incredible title and social status in the king of the 10,000 beasts world. Because fighting phantoms were extremely rare. One appeared maybe every 1,000 years. Becoming a fighting phantom meant that everyone else was already too inferior to be compared. Becoming a protector was a way to improve in the future. However, Lin Feng was only an emperor. But still, they couldn't help admiring and respecting him. "I wouldn't mind becoming his protector," said Zishu's flood dragon, staring at Lin Feng. He didn't think it was something to be ashamed of. Being a protector wasn't like being a slave. During a few hundred years, protectors enjoyed a special status. If they didn't like their fighting phantom, they could also give up. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.